Okay. Well, let's go then. This is the Design Review Committee meeting of May the 18th, 2020. And we have, and I'll call it to order, we do have for the commissioners another resolution to approve. And this resolution will entertain, I need to entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2020-62, a resolution declaring that the Design Review Committee shall meet on May 18th, 2020, and to conduct its essential business by electronic means rather than being required to gather a quorum of the members physically present in the same location, because it is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Is there such a motion?
Mr. Chair, before we go ahead and make a motion on that, could I ask you to make a roll call for the commission?
Okay.
Make the motion to adopt the resolution.
Okay, let me go back.
Mary Pierce.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. I'll note that's noted. Let me do, as Kelly Denningsfelder just asked me to do, a roll call of the commissioners that are present. So just respond when I call your name. Kelly Baker Heffley.
Present.
Susan Besser.
Present.
Jeff Carson.
Present.
Mike Hathaway is not present, nor is Brian Lester, I know. Lisa Marquardt.
Present.
Mary Pierce. Present.
Present.
Ken Scalf.
Present.
And Jim Roberts. Okay, Mary's made the motion then to adopt this resolution. Is there a second to that motion?
Kelly seconds.
Kelly Baker Heffley. Good. Thank you. All right, all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 And I'm just going, well, I have to do a roll call.
Mr. Chair.
Excuse me. I have to do a roll call. Kelly Baker Heffley,
Aye.
Susan Besser,
Aye.
Jeff Carson,
Aye.
Lisa Marquardt,
Aye.
Mary Pierce,
Aye.
Ken Scalf,
Aye.
and Jim Roberts. Aye. All right, now, due to the COVID-19 outbreak, the meeting will be a virtual meeting. The purpose of the meeting will be to conduct a design review workshop. No decisions on applications will be made at this meeting. The public may call 615-550-8420 to listen to the meeting and make comments during any public comment period. The public may also email comments to planningintake@franklintn.gov to be read aloud during the meeting. Emailed comments will be accepted until 1 hour prior to the meeting. The meeting video will also be available for public viewing 24 hours following the meeting on the City of Franklin Facebook and YouTube accounts. Wow, having said all that, welcome to the May Design Review Committee meeting. The DRC is a subcommittee of historic zoning. The meeting is informal and designed to guide applicants through the process of obtaining a certificate of appropriateness or COA for projects within the city's historic districts in light of the Historic District Design Guidelines. Applicants' participation in DRC meetings are voluntary but highly recommended for complex renovations, additions, or new construction. Changes made or suggestions taken by the applicant based on discussions with the DRC are the applicant's choice, but the DRC makes no representation as to whether any changes or suggestions made during the meeting will be approved by the voting body, the Historic Zoning Commission. This afternoon, we've got 6 items on the agenda. We're going to try to allocate around 10 to 15 minutes for the discussion of each item for the first 3 items and around 20 minutes to each of the latter 3 items. I'm going to have a timer set so that I will give everybody a heads up when we've have a couple of minutes left in that time so that we can make this as efficient as possible and be respectful of those that are at the tail end of the agenda especially. When your item's called, please introduce yourself, generally describe your item in about 5 minutes, especially noting the high points that you want us to focus on. Please note that the screen sharing permissions will be limited to the staff. So ask Kelly Gibson, and where's Kelly Gibson? Wave your hand, Kelly, so all can see you. For items 1 through 3, or Amanda, 4 through 6. to pull up pages of your item as needed. Then please focus on the specific points that you want us to discuss. Once you've provided a general review, staff will provide comment on specific points for the Design Review Committee to discuss as well. So our first item is a discussion of alterations, wall landscaping at 215 Franklin Road. Emily Jenkins, applicant. Ms. Jenkins, I see you right there in the bottom of the page. So thank you and welcome back.
Thank you.
And go ahead and just highlight your what you want us to focus on. And
Yeah,
Kelly Gibson has got some items when you're ready for her to put them up there.
Yes, please let me know when you'd like for me to pull up the documents and I'll share my screen.
If you want to pull them up. So what we submitted to Amanda, we weren't really certain how much of this went through administrative review versus what would need the Historic Design Commission, because we submitted our hardscape plan and our landscape plan. You may remember when we first started this out, we had started with the idea of adding a back porch. There was some concern about the massing of that from the Design Review Committee. So we kind of went back to the drawing board and are now just doing a stone patio in back, which is my understanding because it's grade level, doesn't need the Design Review Committee approval. But the portion that does is the reworking of the stone wall that's in front of the house. I know the wall went in before Historic Design Review was doing review of that type of a thing, or else it went in without permission. I know it was not an approved structure at the time that it was put in. And what we would like to do is to take the wall down and to rebuild it to where it would have a split in the middle. We do have the new sidewalk project that's coming in, and we would like it to be so that one could walk from the sidewalk to the front door of the house, and it would open up the view of the house and not seem like such a large obstruction directly in front of the view of the house.
So this is the property in case any of the commissioners are not familiar. I pulled up 2 photos from Google Street View that will show the facade of the house. The wall is mostly obstructed by vegetation, but you can see a bit here, and then a bit here as well. So the applicant is proposing to alter the wall so that there's a gap in the middle, and then a sidewalk would be placed in that gap, and the sidewalk would extend all the way to Franklin Road. So the applicant submitted 2 options for design, and the first option appears to be just the gap in the wall with the sidewalk here, and the second option is the gap with the sidewalk, but also with wing walls attached on the sides. So the applicable guidelines are landscaping and walls, and due to the fact that this is a somewhat atypical request, the guidelines don't speak directly to it. But the guidelines say that new sidewalks and walkways should follow historic patterns of alignment, configuration, width and materials, and that fences and walls should support the historic character of the district.
And just to clarify, the one picture with the wing walls, I didn't mean to submit that one. That was one of 2 options the landscaper gave us. We do not intend to do the side walls. We just wanted to go straight like it does now and not turn back.
Oh,
And-
okay.
and
It's
our-
just this one.
So it's just that one.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yep. And the intent at this point is not to do anything from the wall to the sidewalk until the city finishes that part, because the majority of the green space between where the new sidewalk will be and where we would like the wall to be is in the construction easement for the construction of the sidewalk. So it would all get torn up when the city does their part. So what we're hoping to do is to get the wall rebuilt with the opening in the center, and then at some point when the city actually finishes getting everything in line and does get the sidewalks put in, then we would come back to Historic Design Committee for permission for what type of material would connect between the sidewalk and the front steps. And what we are likely to be asking for is like a loose cobble or just some flagstone pavers. We're not envisioning any sort of a solid concrete connector between the sidewalk and the front of the house.
Oh,
So
okay.
Kelly, can you pull up the photo of the wall again and remind us
Sure.
what it looks like?
So you can't see it extremely well, but you can see it to some degree. So you can see the wall here, and just as some background, the wall actually screens a parking pad that's located in front of the house here.
And what does the guidelines say about parking pads or the municipal code about parking pads?
So parking pads are actually not currently permitted. So there would not be a concern about setting a precedent because you can't currently place parking pads in front of residences on Franklin Road.
So the wall actually screens the parking pad.
Yes.
Okay.
So you can see a bit of the stone wall here and then here as well.
And the magnolia tree that's blocking your view in that picture, that's gone. That had to come out as part of the sidewalk project as well.
I thought so. I thought. I
Oh, okay. Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Because I've driven by it recently.
Yep.
So this is Lisa Marquardt. I just had a question. You said that wall was added on at some point. Do we know when, more or less? I mean, has it been there 50 years or less than 50 years?
We are not sure.
50 years because it was the owner before the owner before.
It was probably added about 5 years ago, Lisa.
Oh, okay.
I'd say between 5 and 10.
Okay. Okay.
I would go 5 and 10.
Mhm.
This is Ken Scalf. I've got a question. There's a dry stack, a modern dry stack wall in the foreground in one of the photographs. Is this wall at the parking pad the same construction?
I believe it was done at the same time. Are you talking about the stuff that's at the end of the driveway?
Yes.
Here. Yeah.
Yeah. It all looks to have been done at the same time, and the stone at the end of the driveway is coming out as part of the sidewalk project and not going back in.
Okay.
Okay.
But
Because it's
it is
wide.
a modern rendition of a dry stack wall.
Correct. Yes, my understanding is that the two owners ago put in the mailbox, the stone at the end of the driveway, and then the wall in front of the parking court all at the same time.
Emily, how far did the easement come back into your current yard now? Roughly from the road itself back?
The construction easement, I think, is about 20 feet. I think the sidewalk, the actual sidewalk easement is like 8 feet.
Okay, but from the road back to where your property or the new proposed sidewalk, whenever that's done, how far back would that start now?
I think there's 3 feet between the road and where the sidewalk starts, and then I think the sidewalk itself is like 6 or 8 feet wide.
I'm sorry, your walkway that you want to do, that'll be perpendicular.
Oh.
How far back would you start that sidewalk? That's your sidewalk.
Oh, gotcha. It would go from between the parking pad to connect up to where the city sidewalk ends. So
Right.
you would be able to walk off the,
I'm not explaining myself well. I'm trying to get
Yeah.
where your walkway that you want to do starts at the road. Where does that start in relation to the current street? Would it be roughly 30 feet back from the current edge of the street?
no, I don't think it would be that far back because it would go, I mean, if the sidewalk is 11 feet back from the street, the inside edge, then it would be the inside edge of the sidewalk to the parking pad. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I'm standing on the road. I'm standing on the edge of Franklin Road right now, and I'm looking back toward your house.
Right.
And I want to know
Yep.
how far is it from that point back to where your walkway starts that'll lead to your house? Roughly. 20 to 30, I'm guessing 25 feet. If you've got that construction easement and the sidewalk and all of that, I'm guessing, I'm just trying to get an idea of, I don't know how much, I guess it's 20 feet construction easement all the way
Becca
up
said she
Franklin
sent it
Road.
to PR. Going to get some good publicity for her.
I know it's 50 feet-ish from where the wall would be to the road.
That's what I was about to say. We had already had that conversation. Right now,
Yeah.
the roadway is about 50 feet from the wall.
Right.
If I understand correctly, the sidewalk will not be completed until the city sidewalk's in place, and then it will intersect the city sidewalk, correct?
That's right.
Right.
But I'm trying to get an idea of where does that thing really start? And really, it doesn't mean that much at this point. But I'm just curious as to how much ground is going to be chewed up by this expansion on that side of the road. But
Oh, yeah, yeah. My understanding is that when they do it, the roadway is not going to widen on my side, that I'm not actually
Okay.
losing yard. I'm only losing where the drainage easement is now, is where the sidewalk is going to be. So they're regrading all of that. So it'll be flat from the road to my house. And the new sidewalks will go in where those drainage culverts are now, basically. But that
Okay.
I'm not actually losing depth
Okay.
of yard.
okay, all right, that's good. Who's
I
got
have
any
one
other?
question.
All right, yeah,
If
go
I
ahead.
may. When you build the wall back, do you plan on building it back as dry stack, or will there be any difference in design, or what are you thinking as far as that goes?
We were thinking building it back the same look that it has now.
Okay. Thank you.
But currently, you have columns that terminate on either end, short columns, is that correct?
Correct.
Well,
And those match, if you look at the front of the house on the right-hand side, there is old fence there that has stone columns that are kind of matched to the ones that are on the wall in the front. And that fence, I think, actually is older. It looks older than the wall that's in front of the parking area.
right. So when you remove the section for the sidewalk, will that be a termination of the wall, or will it have the columns there also?
I think we would put columns on both ends so that it looks balanced.
Okay.
Any
But
other?
ideally, if you're looking
Yeah.
at the house on the street, you'd be able to see the front door, see the lantern, have more of a traditional walk up to a Victorian cottage than right now where there's just a wall blocking the front of the house.
Any other questions from anyone?
Could we see the rendering one more time? This is Lisa Marquardt.
Sure. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
And this is the correct rendering. Is that right, Emily?
I can only see, okay, wait a minute. I can only see part of it. Yep, there we go.
That's
Okay,
it.
great.
Yes, that's the one without the wing walls, correct.
Yes.
And it indicates the columns on the plan too.
Right, it does.
Correct. Mhm.
Anybody else got any other questions? Kelly, any other comments do you have, Kelly Gibson?
I don't personally have any other comments. Do you, Amanda?
I think I do have one question. The gap in the wall to me would need to, if approved by the commission, it would need to be conditioned on a sidewalk going in. And I think the commission would need to talk about the materials of the sidewalk and what that would need to look like. Right now, Kelly Gibson can go over the conditions of the existing drive and talk about the context of the corridor and what other configuration, like driveway and sidewalk configurations there are. If she has that information available, I think she does.
As far as sidewalks on the front lawn, or yeah, so there are a few other examples in terms of of precedent of sidewalks kind of going up the front lawn. And there are a few examples of circular drives, but there aren't any examples quite like this in which, a sidewalk is connected directly to a circular drive. But as we stated earlier, the commissioners would not have to be concerned with precedent setting because parking pads are not permitted in front of residences on Franklin Road. So this would be a unique case in that sense. I don't know if you had anything to add, Amanda.
This is Mary Pierce. Am I too loud?
No, you're fine to me.
You're fine.
Anyway, I just wondered because of how much I had my volume turned up. I would, when the sidewalk material is considered, I would be concerned about flagstone. I think that is atypical of if you're trying to underpin the character of a Victorian residence, and I would prefer brick or concrete. So I know we're not deciding that right now, but I just thought it would be good to let the applicant know where I stand. Thank you.
I do think it's an important consideration if the commission does consider the alteration to the wall, that there may, if the alteration to the wall stands alone, and it would be appropriate to stand alone without a sidewalk going through it, that could be approved on its own. Or if the commission finds that the alteration could not stand alone without the sidewalk, understanding that the applicant does not want to put the sidewalk in right now, and for obvious reasons, that it would need to be conditioned on a sidewalk going in, upon the finishing of the Franklin Road's, public sidewalk. That should be considered as a condition of approval if that's what the commission finds. And I do think it would be important for the commission to go ahead and make those comments about the expectations for the materials now, if you find that that's important. And
Kelly,
Kelly, if you had any comments on that, I think it'd be important to share now too, if you had any.
what does the driveway consist of? I know there's some pavers at the entrance. Do they go all the way around?
The parking pad is the pavers. There's pavers at the end of the driveway, and then there's aggregate in between. What we're hoping to do is where we added the breezeway connection from the house to the garage, we had to remove an existing, what appears to be pretty old cobblestone patio there. I'm hoping to reuse the cobblestone if the commission would approve that, to do the sidewalk out of that, because it is already on property and was there before.
Okay.
We can pull up that aerial again if you'd like to see it, everyone.
So when you say cobblestone, is it a modern precast concrete paver type material?
No, they're actual stone.
If I could get permission to screen share again, I think it'd be helpful to see.
Yeah, and then let's kind of wrap this up because we're getting close to time here.
Amanda, do the guidelines talk about sidewalks?
Kelly can speak to that.
Yeah, so sidewalks are considered under landscaping. And the guidelines are somewhat general on sidewalks, but they say that sidewalks and walkways should follow historic patterns of alignment, configuration, width, and materials, and that the layout of new sidewalks and walkways should take the placement of historic trees into consideration.
And Kelly's pulling up that aerial right now, guys, so you can see the circular drive configuration and various materials.
There you go. Can everyone see it?
Nope.
No,
Huh.
it's okay. Zoom is difficult sometimes with sharing. There we go.
Great.
There we go.
Yeah, so you can see the circular drive here in the wall.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can see where you can't really see where the cobble is, but it's between the garage and the house behind, you can see there's an old sidewalk that's no longer there. That was the entrance, the side entrance to the house before. Between that side entrance and the back fence, there was a cobblestone patio there, and we saved all of the stone from that. We took it out for the breezeway.
Okay, so as it stands, your plan would be to use that cobblestone to construct the walkway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We don't have quite enough, but the stonemason has looked at it and said that he could find matching cobble fairly easily.
Okay.
All right. Anything
And
else?
it would be set in concrete.
I think before it was sand set, and that would be my preference, only because my understanding is we have a considerable drainage problem on that side of the road that they think may be worse after the sidewalks come in, because everything drains towards the house.
Okay.
Ugh. Okay, anything
I would
else?
hope our civil folks in-house could address that, but
I hope so too.
Does anyone have any questions or comments about the proposed material for the sidewalk?
I gave my comment.
I think it's fine as proposed.
Okay,
So would the preference be that we submit for the June meeting and just propose it with a cobble path to be added at a later date?
yeah.
Or since we're not intending to put that in now, do we leave that off and have to apply separately for that?
Do we know how long this project's going to take the city?
1 to 2 years to be started at a date to be determined. They're still in a lawsuit with my neighbor, so.
Oh, joy. Amanda, what would be the guidance on that? Because she would just, the COA would just be good for a certain amount of time, so.
Kelly, let's close screen now. Close the share. Okay. I do think that it would be appropriate for Emily to move forward so she can make the changes she would like to make. I do think I want to turn this over to Kelly because this is Kelly's project, but I would recommend that you guys kind of give your feedback on the wall alteration so that there's some sort of feedback from Ms. Jenkins on whether or not it'd be appropriate to move forward with an application for June. And then secondly, I would give the guidance that if the commission does not find that the wall alteration would be appropriate in its own right to stand alone, that it would be conditioned on a sidewalk going in once the Franklin Road sidewalk is completed. And I don't think that Ms. Jenkins would have a problem with that because that is her intent. But wall alteration of that nature would, I don't want to speak for Ms. Gibson, but I don't think that would be something that we would typically find in the context of our districts. What do you think, Ms. Gibson?
No, I mean, this is the only example quite like this that can be found in the district.
So I'll turn it over to Kelly. Do you have any, you want to, ask for feedback?
I personally don't have any additional comments. Do any commissioners have any other questions or comments for Emily or staff?
I have none. Does anybody have anything else? Otherwise, we need to move on.
Just
Ms.
quickly.
Besser, Susan
Oh, go
Besser.
ahead.
I think that with this type of thing, we're looking at setting precedents. And so I'll look forward to seeing what the comments are from Kelly, but I have some concern.
Setting a precedent in what regard?
What I'm hearing is that there's nothing like this in downtown Franklin. Is that correct?
Well, there are no cases where there is a sidewalk connected to a parking pad that's located in front of a residence, but there are a few parking pads located in front of residences because they aren't allowed under the current municipal code. So there certainly wouldn't be a fear of more people putting parking pads in front of their homes because it's not permitted. But I mean, as far as sidewalks being located on front lawns, there are a few examples of that in the district. So it just depends on which aspect you would be concerned about.
Anything else?
Just quickly, Jim, this is Lisa Marquardt. I just, I feel that it would be helpful to have,
I can't
picture-
hear you.
oh, can't hear me?
You just froze. We had a
Now I
screen
can hear
freeze.
you.
Okay. Pictures of the cobbles, a better sense of the dimensions of the wall, and of course the materials. So with all of that information, I think we can be a little more helpful or come to a better conclusion. Thank you.
I'm going to stay concerned about the cobble sidewalk because that is setting a precedent.
All right, all, thank you for all very
Okay,
much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks, Emily. Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you, Emily.
All right, let's go to our second item, discussions of alterations, accessory structure at 203 2nd Avenue South. I see the Christians here. So Kelly Gibson.
Hi, Diane and Mike. How are you?
Hello.
I'm going to go ahead and pull up the photos that you submitted. One moment. Can everyone see? Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, so the applicants are proposing a replacement to the current garage door. I've added a photo from our historic resource inventory to show what the garage looks like to better visualize. But so this is the garage currently. It's kind of, the photo of course is obstructed by the car, but you can see that it has a modern door on it. And the applicant would like to replace the modern door with a door of a more appropriate style and materials. And they've submitted two options. This is option one, which is a carriage style door. And then option two is here, which is a pedestrian door with siding infill. The guidelines would better support option one as being more compatible with the district. But I'm not sure if the applicants had any comments.
That
Yeah.
would be our preferred choice as well. And the garage door that's currently there was probably installed, I'm not sure, but there was a big renovation in the 1980s and the door has to be replaced. It will not close completely. It is, it's just about seeing its last day as far as being functional.
This is Mary Pierce. I think it's a huge improvement, option one. I think it complies much better with the guidelines and the period of the house. So I'll be enthusiastically supporting option one.
Me too. I think it's much more appropriate than what is there.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to ask a question for clarification. Is this option, option one, is it changing the opening of the garage door itself? I see the black X there and I'm just curious about it.
I was going to ask that question as well, Kelly. It's a good question.
Diane, you want to respond to that?
Sure. No, I X'd that out because I didn't want any confusion. I made this photo from a house somewhere in downtown Franklin. I can't remember. The doors would actually fit the exact dimensions of the current garage door, and the doors will be custom made. And that's I don't have the dimensions on the photo, but the garage door that's currently there is just a single garage door. So the two doors would fit that space.
But this overall entrance that's in this photo, even though you've X'd out part, that looks like that would be about the size of your present garage door opening.
Maybe, probably, but I'm not.
Close to it, but that, so that you would have two doors that would fill the space. That's all that's going in there. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that's wood doors.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I'm
I have a
fine.
picture of the front of the house.
I can pull one up.
Kelly, just exit screen and we'll reshare once you have that up.
Okay.
I've got that done for you.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So the Christians have been doing a lot of work on this home, and I just want to take a second while Kelly is pulling that up to thank them very much for all the work they're doing to help rehabilitate the home. They're doing some work on restoring siding in kind, and they've been working to document that with me and just kind of sprucing up the home a little bit. So being a good steward to the community. So we appreciate that.
This is Lisa Marquardt. I walk by that property every single day, and boy, it's a labor of love, but it shows. It shows. The love is showing.
Thank you. You can actually see the house now.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question regarding the doors. So most likely it's an 8-foot wide garage door, just based on what I see. So it's going to have 2 4-foot wide garage doors, or it's going to have 2 standard 3-foot wide garage doors with infill of another material.
Our choice would be for there to be 2 4-foot doors that would open outward, of course, but that would be our preference, just to cover that space.
Well, that is a very good question. I do need to talk to zoning. This is a historic property, and we want to make sure that that's taken into consideration. Our zoning ordinance does require that when there are 2 doors, there is a gap in between.
Okay.
I want to see if that will apply in this situation or not. Since this is an existing building, if that's a consideration. Kelly Dannenfelser, I'm not sure if that will apply here.
No, that won't apply here.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I always think of worst case scenarios. I want to get everyone on the, just hip to everything that might come up. So I just wanted to make sure when Kim brought that up, it made me tricking everything in my head.
So this structure will continue to function as a garage, is that correct?
Yes, yes. Well, no, I mean, it won't be a usable garage for an automobile. We're just storing things in it at this point, our real estate signs and things like that.
So accessory use, yes.
Okay, anything else?
Can everyone see the photo of the home?
It looks a lot different now after painting.
Yeah.
It does.
Ms. Christian, you did state it was your preference to have the 2 4-foot, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you for putting the picture up. It's very helpful.
Of course.
Other questions?
What information would you all like to see in an application from the Christians?
Just, I think I want to see specifics on the doors. Just specific specifications on the doors.
Style and materials.
Yep.
Okay, anything else?
Is the door going to be painted or stained?
It will be painted.
And I think current pictures of your of the house too, as it is now, after the changes that you've already made, so that we have a full perspective of the current state of the property.
Got it.
And I think that's it. Any parting comments, Kelly, or any other questions from the commission?
I don't have any additional comments. Do any of the commissioners?
Nope. Okay, I think we're good. Then thank you, Diane, Mike.
Thank you, Diane.
Okay, well, Diane and Mike, Kelly will be in touch tomorrow morning, and we'll send you information about how to apply.
Okay, that sounds
Great.
good.
Thank you. Thanks
you.
for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
All right, our next project discussion of alterations, landscaping at 230 Franklin Road, Gamble Design Collaborative.
Hey, good afternoon.
Kelly.
Kelly Freimeyer from Gamble Design. Kelly Gibson has a PowerPoint presentation to some slides that I put together. Kelly, if you wouldn't mind to pull those up, I'd appreciate it.
Of course, I'm pulling it up.
So we are seeking to change out a portion of sidewalk at the current factory location. You can go ahead and pull up the location, the next slide, Kelly. So there's a section of walkway that extends from the parking lot to the back of Mojo Taco. This is not original to the property. In fact, it's a hodgepodge of materials, and as you'll see in some of the photographs that we have, there's an uneven cobbled paver. It's actually a marble from pieces of old headstone. So there's some hazards, slip hazards and things there. If you want to go to the next slide, we'll start looking at some pictures of what's actually the kind of existing condition. So the picture on your left here is showing the entranceway to this walkway from the parking lot. So there's a concrete traditional sidewalk threshold, and then the paver beyond. And this is just an example of how it's hodgepodged in there with some irregular pieces. They're of different elevation and texture. Next slide. So here's just some additional pieces. There's railroad ties lining the pathway most of the distance. These are in most places kind of rotten, and again, creating a walkway hazard in this area. Some of the plant material is in good shape. Like you can see the magnolia in this picture on the left is great, and that's part of the landscape that we'd want to preserve. You'll see some in the landscape in the future pictures that is overgrown, and we'll probably want to remove that and put something that's a little bit more appropriate for a pedestrian area. Next slide. Most of this existing walkway feels like the back of house. There's a lot of individual shop entrances, and then there's also the main factory entrances where you can see they've got the railroad ties, the pavers, and the concrete all coming together. So there's a few different things going on back here. There's also some transition with the stoops for these individual doors that come out. We have a real good survey looking at how we're going to make these a little safer if we can, bringing them up to grade so that there's not as much tripping hazards and things in the back. Next slide. There's also a couple of fire escapes, and same sort of situation here, how we make sure that the grades are consistent as we look at a new consistent surface back here. So this is just kind of showing you what we've got to work with. We're looking at solving some drainage issues, looking at making this a much easier and safer route for pedestrians to walk as they move along this side of the factory. So, next slide. Again, just some of the kind of conditions here, many of which we've kind of already talked about. Next slide. Okay, so other walkways at the factory, most of them are traditional concrete. There are a few areas of paver, but majority of it falls along the kind of traditional concrete style. So what we're looking at, replacing this whole section, we're looking at different options. There's some advantages to doing pavers, and there's some advantages to using traditional concrete. And we're looking at potentially mixing the two, depending on kind of what those site conditions are warranting. So if we want to go to the next slide here. We're looking at two different Belgard pavers, very similar concrete paver styles and patterns. So this may be something that we look at for that route in addition to or instead of a solid traditional concrete. Again, we are solving some trip hazard situations and adjusting some grades. So there's going to have to be a little bit of care with what we select. And then also a couple of drainage situations that we need to make sure we're working through. Majority of the landscaping that we would be looking at, removing some of the overgrown shrubs and just making sure that we have some appropriate pedestrian scaled shade loving plant material back there. So those are the pictures and the short explanation of what we're looking to achieve.
Thank you, Kelly. Just a bit of background information from staff of the property. So the existing sidewalk from the parking lot to the restaurant is not historic. And based on the materials that are currently present there and the industrial nature of the property, you see a lot of corrugated metal, brick, concrete, some wood, but really mostly just those industrial materials. And I have one question for Kelly. Are the majority of the existing sidewalks at the factory are plain concrete? Is that correct?
Almost all of them are. There's a one patio area that is a concrete paver, but everything else is a traditional concrete. And that is one of the things that we are looking at as far as a replacement for the sidewalk. Some of the back of house feel and the pavers seem a little inconsistent. But also, you know, we do have several doorway entrances and things there that we're looking at and want to make sure that we're not creating additional issues if we can't meet those grades or maintain a step. We've spoken to some engineering staff and kind of looked at where we need to make sure we meet grade if we can. And some of those transitions are better achieved with concrete and not the paver. So we're trying to balance a couple of different goals with the materials that we eventually settle on.
Okay.
The photo on the right that has the combination, has the concrete banding around the perimeter and the pavers.
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like what you're describing. I mean, maybe you set up a pattern that would be reminiscent of the railroad ties, but if it's not historic, I don't know that it matters. But I'm kind of looking at this right photo as kind of maybe more representing your approach.
That is something we are absolutely looking at, especially something that would have this unique banding at the main entrance to the factory. We feel like that's an easy way to kind of show the importance and kind of the directionality of those doorways and thresholds. So that is something that we've looked at with the pavers. It's actually going to be a little bit easier to achieve with the Catalina paver, just for depth and consistency. But they're very similar in look. There's about 2 inches difference in the block shape from the Catalina to the granite slab. So very minute change. They're both, concrete pavers, but that is an option that we've looked at to kind of create that banding. And if it ends up that the traditional concrete sidewalk makes more sense through the majority of that area, we are looking at different ways to still accent certain doorway areas.
Would it be helpful?
I do know that the railroad ties and the headstones were done when the Leahy's redid the building. They weren't there when it was an operational factory.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Would it be helpful to pull, if I pull up more context photos? Kelly, I could even go back to the original letter that you submitted that kind of had a few more, if that's okay.
That's fine. I just didn't think they were clean enough for everybody to see real well on the screen. So I wanted to show a few more, but yes, absolutely.
So this is Lisa Marquardt. I've been on that walkway many times with my grandson, and it is hazardous. I will say there's something funky and kind of interesting, about all that sort of retrofitted the pieces, and some of it to me is appealing aesthetically, but I 100% understand the reason for needing this new one. On the picture that just passed, that one on the left, it looks like the pavers are more on the gray side than the one you called Catalina, or is there a difference in color?
There are with this particular the granite slab. There are 4 colors that are available in our area. There's a limestone color, a gray, and then kind of more of a warm tone. It's not incredibly easy to find pictures that really show the stone and the pattern. The color choice would definitely probably, if going with the paver, would be something that we'd need to be very careful with. There aren't as many choices for color in the other style that's just a slightly smaller stone.
Yeah, I mean, in the final analysis, it probably doesn't matter that much, but I will say that the gray tends to replicate what was there.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's would be a much more consistent choice than the warm colors.
Okay, other questions?
Kelly, do you have any more to add from a staff analysis standpoint?
I did have one question. Was any consideration given to brick? I mean, I know that can be very hard to match, but was any consideration given there, or no?
It was not a material that we considered.
No, we didn't want to contrast with the brick that's the historic material of the factory itself. So we wanted to differentiate that.
Okay.
Kelly, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts as a professional feedback?
I kind of wonder if due to the industrial nature of the property and the materials that are currently there, if a warmer color wouldn't be better suited, better than a gray or a cool color. I know we were just discussing the color options, but to me, a warmer color would actually be much more compatible with the brick and the metal that you're seeing at the factory, much more than what's proposed.
Well, we weren't really thinking of gray marble as our comparison, but more of a kind of Middle Tennessee limestone. And in Middle Tennessee, our limestone does have some warm tones to it, has some gray tones to it. And both materials that, or paver choices that Kelly was explaining, bring those colors and contrasts in. So we're gonna get some samples, and we're gonna look at these paver mixes. Hopefully have those for you prior to the next meeting.
Now, Kelly Gibson, what would be your recommendation to the commission as far as what the applicants provided, traditional concrete material versus a paver material?
I think that a traditional concrete would be much more compatible with the existing conditions at the factory. I mean, the presentation even mentions all of the other sidewalks there are traditional concrete. So it stands to reason that making this traditional concrete would be most compatible. If you were to go with a paver option, and I'd be interested to know what the commissioners and Amanda as well thought about this, but if you were to go with the paver option, I do think that a warm color would be more compatible, considering the nature of the property and
I don't disagree
the
with
materials
the
there.
concrete. I think the concrete would be more appropriate contextually, and it's largely because I believe it does have more of an industrial nature, the industrial vibe that's been reinforced there. We have approved a number of canopy improvements at the site over the last few years, and there have been uses of concrete quite a bit there. And then ultimately, I don't want to approve a material that may be one that detracts from the historic materials found at the site, like the metals, whether it's corrugated or sheet metal, the concrete, the brick, and take away from the texture and the colors and the more industrial natural beauty of those materials.
We may ultimately end up going, Amanda, with concrete. It's a lot cheaper than pavers to install, but there are a lot of utilities there that are running back and forth between buildings.
Right.
And so the factory said, look, we're having to maintain electric, water line, telephone, gas, all of that within that kind of narrow way between buildings. Pavers are just so much easier to pull up and fix the problem and then put those pavers back down. Yeah, so that was one of the main reasons. The other reason is that we have multiple fire exits along the back of the building. So for a contractor, they can go in and install short sections of pavers between the fire doors so that customers and people who are in the factory still have that emergency egress path. It becomes a lot more complicated when we're doing concrete and having to set up formwork and pour concrete, and then you've got to broom finish or whatever. So we're kind of wrestling with the logistics of how to do that. And one thing about pavers, I think that kind of stands out is that all the concrete sidewalks, primarily on the outside were historic. This is the only walk that didn't exist then, and it would be the only walk that would not be concrete. So I struggle with that too. I can see kind of going back and forth between the pavers and the concrete, and I can kind of rationalize and make arguments for both. But one of the reasons why they do like pavers is just that easy ability to maintain. within that area.
Well, I think that's a good point that I didn't pick up on in the presentation. Thank you for bringing that
Amanda,
up.
I've lost your voice.
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. No, that's a really good point to bring up. I didn't realize that was a consideration driving the applicant's proposal.
And Amanda, I would say Greg's idea of something that reads like limestone, I think would be very compatible with all the metal and concrete features. Thank you.
Well,
Well,
it
thank
sounds
you all
like
for your
it's-
input. We really appreciate it.
It sounds like concrete and pavers or pavers is the way to go, and y'all are just gonna have to come back with however you decide you want to lay it out based on what you just got through saying about the utility.
We will. I mean, Kelly showed a picture earlier of some electrical conduits on the
Yes.
side of the factory. That whole area has pieces of marble slab or marble blocks that are in concrete right now. We can't move that. I mean, you'd have to go in there and literally jackhammer through 6 inches of concrete with all that electric conduit underneath. So we're just going to saw cut that, leave it, let it be a part of the kind of that funky walkway. There aren't enough marble in that little area there to cause tripping hazards or slipping problems. Or when it rains, that whole sidewalk's like glass. I mean, it's just so slippery right now. So they really need to correct an issue that they have.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
Thanks, guys.
I do have one question though for the commissioners. Do you think as far as papers go, are you looking for more of like a flagstone type look or more of like a structured kind of like rectangular type look for just to give the applicant some direction?
I would lean toward regular pattern pavers because you've got pedestrian traffic, you've got probably some wheeled traffic with deliveries and so forth. So they're trying to balance the aesthetics with the materials and functionality
and safety.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of jives more with the industrial vibe too, something a little bit more regular. I see Mary shaking her head. You have comments?
I was just nodding at what Ken was saying.
Okay.
Well, what we're proposing is a pattern. It's a pattern that's made up of pavers that are in multiple shapes. I think, Kelly, they're at about 4. Okay. I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Got it. All right. Anything else?
All right. Kelly will send you some info tomorrow about submittal. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Greg and Kelly.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you very much. Okay, our next item is addition, alterations, portico enclosure, demolition, accessory, and new construction of the accessory at 209 2nd Avenue South. Marcus Brooks, welcome, Marcus.
Hello, everyone.
All right, guys. Well, I want to welcome Marcus and Tina and Robbie Robinson here today. I don't think we have Matt with us today or Josh, just you guys, right? Okay, great. I do want to say that Marcus and the Robinsons have been working really hard to take the commission and the DRC's comments along with staff's into consideration. I think they have something really exciting to share with you all today. So I will turn it over to Marcus and I'll go ahead and pull up the information that he shared with me. All right, Marcus, go ahead.
Great. Jim, would you like to do this in 3 parts like we done it before, or do you want me to just introduce the entire project?
You could just go right through it.
Okay, great.
Because we're gonna, and we'll comment as you go along.
Okay. So this is our site plan you're seeing on the screen now. For a brief second there, you saw the front of the stone cottage with the red metal roof. What we've changed this time in this proposal is we've given up the 2nd floor completely, rearranged the insides, and we've taken a look per your suggestions, per the committee's suggestions, on making that accessory structure fit the rest of our program. So the accessory structure is in the rear. As Amanda's commented before, it has been altered fairly recently, with probably without approval when the lot was split. So it is not a historical structure at this moment, I guess.
It's been compromised, I would say, for sure.
Compromised. Okay. It is also a dirt floor structure with posts that go directly into the ground with no footing. So structurally, it is questionable. With making that accessory structure a little bit bigger, we are 64 feet over our allowed coverage. So that will be part of our conversation.
I'll just jump in here just for logistical purposes to make sure everyone can see. If you can't see the right side of the site plan and the video, like you see 4 people on a video screen, you can drag that around because I can't change the screen much on my share screen. So if you can't see the auxiliary building, you can drag the people's faces around to a different part of the screen. Does everyone?
Yeah, there should be a little L-shaped.
I did it.
Rectangle.
Yay, good.
Nice.
I knew that. I knew somebody would be benefiting from that piece of information. Okay, good. Okay, so everyone can see the proposed auxiliary building that I'm kind of circling with my.
And within that circle in the dashed line, you can see the existing footprint of the shed.
Okay, so here's existing and the proposed is in the dashed lines.
Okay, Marcus, give us the dimensions of both the addition to the house as well as the overall dimensions of the new accessory.
I can pull that up as we're talking. I don't have that right off the top of my head. Let me measure my PDF. So Amanda, I'll get that for you right away, Jim. Amanda, if you go to the next.
That's fine. That's fine.
The next slide, we have some images of. So this is the front of the house. On the front, we're just proposing, not updating the windows. What's the word I'm looking for? Making sure they work.
Restoring
yeah, restoring, rehabbing them. We're also planning on doing the same thing to the front door, painting, trim, stuff like that. On the left, you can see the porte-cochere where we have proposed a sunroom instead of a kitchen. The aim of both the addition and enclosing the porte-cochere is to respond to the historic guidelines in making the additions to the historic house distinct from the historic house. So how we're doing that is we're picking up on the existing windows, their pane patterns, and we're going to use a proportional size throughout the addition and the enclosure. Can you go to the next slide? So you can see here the addition on the back. It is, Amanda, if you can circle it for me, it is the mass with the fireplace chimney on it. Yep. So that window pattern, we're thinking it's going to be a steel look window. Copies itself from the porte-cochere all the way around. And we're planning on using a stone that is similar to the existing house at the water table of the addition and for the chimney. And on the accessory structure over there on the left, we're planning on using hardy siding with your typical 6-inch exposure, probably the thicker artisan type so that we can miter the corners and have a cleaner, more historical look without the corner boards. We are proposing a metal roof on the accessory structure and a wood shake roof for the addition and redoing the roof on the existing house. That's probably the biggest change to the existing house. As we've said before, the existing chimneys will be salvaged and rebuilt as we go along.
Now, the existing house does have a red roof, that's correct?
Yes, it has a red metal roof.
Okay.
If you can go to the next slide, I will have dimensions for you guys right now.
Now, this is the back of the house, correct?
Yes, the rear view of the house. So the addition is 13 feet deep and it is 24.5 feet wide. It steps in right there on that left corner behind the little redbud tree. Sorry, our actual, the house steps in where Amanda just showed, and our addition steps in right where you see the brown siding, Amanda, right there on the left. It's sort of hidden. Our addition also steps in right there. There's a little powder room tucked back there, and we're going to use party siding on that corner also, mitered and 6-inch exposure. So yes, 13 feet deep and 24 feet wide. And the auxiliary building, it's an L shape, so it's not exactly these dimensions, but it's 18 by 17.5. And each little L is about 10 feet wide. Each little stem of the L is about 10 feet wide. I think that's about all.
Amanda, do you have any other comments right now?
I can share some comments about the design guidelines if you'd like.
Yep.
So I did want to reiterate that, Mr. Brooks has worked really hard with me. We've had several discussions about how to get the proposal more in keeping with the design guidelines, and I commend him 100% on trying to balance the applicant's desires with the design guidelines. They've come a really long way. The design guidelines do continue to state that, enclosure of porticoches is not recommended. So that is something that staff will continue to recommend against. I will say that as proposed now, however, it is one that the Secretary of Interior standards can support a little bit more than before. It is more of a reversible enclosure than proposed before, as you can see. And it's hard to show with the rendering here because of the plants, and I can get Marcus to speak to it a little bit more. You can kind of see it here a little better. It's all pushed behind the columns of the carport, and it is definitely one where you can see the scale and functionality historically of the carport in relation to the main form of the house. You wouldn't have someone come along and think that it was a modern addition necessarily to a historic home. And it could be, and I'm assuming, and I would want Mr. Brooks to speak to it, but I'm assuming that it could be removed without any damage to the porticoche. So someone could, if desired in the future, reestablish it as a porticoche. And on the rear, it appears that the applicant's trying to meet the rear principal structure setback, so it wouldn't, be a problem with that zoning ordinance requirement. The scale is appropriate. It is a one-story addition to a one-story house. It is less than 50% of the footprint of the existing house. The lot coverage is 36%, is recommended at 35%. I want to run the numbers one more time just to make sure that's absolutely correct, because it does feel like 35%. It's really close, and it really feels good. I think they've done a wonderful job with that. The staff can support the demolition of the existing structure due to the compensation. And I think the existing or the proposed outbuilding is, from what I can tell, and I need a little bit more information, can be supported as well. Although a 6-inch siding reveal is usually not recommended by the guidelines. It's more like 4 to 5 inch. Now I would like more information about the roofing material. Right now it's standing seam. The guidelines would support maintaining the historic material. I don't know what was there historically. They may have been more of a shingle material historically. So I would like some comments from the commissioners on that. And I don't want to be that nitty gritty person, but I would recommend that this chimney top narrow a little bit to be a more of a historic profile on top. But those are really all the comments I have. I think it's come a very long way, and I am so absolutely thrilled about it. You guys have done a wonderful job. And I also, just for the sake of the commissioners, wanted to clarify, Marcus had said steel. I thought that when he and I talked about this, that he said this enclosure material was wood. So I would like him to clarify that too.
Yeah, I meant to say steel look,
Okay.
sort of a small unit. One other comment you can see from this view is that we're preserving the existing entrance into the porte-cochere. So that entire wall remains. You can, yep, just circling it right now. That entire stone wall remains. So returning it to its existing state would be easier. Just a background, we had proposed removing a lot of that wall in the last version.
I had a couple of comments.
Yeah, go ahead,
This
Lisa.
is Lisa Marquardt. Did you say something about 64 feet over? Can you repeat what you meant by that?
Yes, Amanda said. Yes, Amanda said the lot coverage right now is 36%, which is about 64 feet over the
I see.
guidelines.
Okay. Now, I feel that roofing is just very distinctive of the property. I don't know how long that roofing has been there, and I understand why you want to change it. I do feel like that the shingles are going to change the look of the story and the historic just the historic value of the house, I think, is partially in that roofing. I that's just my opinion. I also wanted to say that on the chimney, I know that you would want to try to match the stone, but I don't think that's going to work. I don't think there's going to be any way that you could try to replicate the stone, the old stone that has been there forever. So, and it looks very massive to me in comparison to the house. But I do like what you've done with the porte-cochere, and those would be my comments.
Okay, the chimney is double-sided, so we're planning on having 2 flues in there. We had talked about doing the inside one gas, so maybe we can narrow it down by choosing a clever vent strategy.
Hey, Randy, are you there? Randy Tosh, are you there? I can't see everybody because I've got share screen on.
He's there. He looks like he's getting to it.
Yeah. Hey, Randy, can you, do you know of a reason they would need to keep it that wide necessarily?
No, as far as the width of the flue and the chimneys, no. It was going to really determine on what their firebox is.
Mm-hmm.
If you do a masonry fireplace, it's different than if you're doing wood burning and masonry outside. It's going to have different requirements, different to build that, as opposed to what a gas chimney fireplace, and so that's going to be the variable there.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I can see what Lisa's saying, how difficult it might be to match, but it would be more difficult, honestly, to do they really can't use brick as an option. So it would, I think,
I believe Marcus said there was going to be 2
DRC needs to talk through, but I don't think anyone certainly begrudges them doing a fireplace there.
I believe Marcus said there was going to be 2 flues inside that. Or do you plan to have one to be, say, wood burning and then one for gas? What's the plan there?
Yeah, the interior fireplace is gas. That's the plan right now, and the exterior is wood burning.
Okay.
So it's still all kind of up in the air.
Okay, so that's going to dictate the depth of it, and it's going to dictate the width of it as well in order to get two flue assemblies in there. Dependent upon the gas fireplace unit, they have different. It has to be installed per the manufacturer's instructions. Marcus knows this, and so what happens is, then that chimney assembly has to be in there, and then you would have your standard clay tile type flue assemblies that go in for the wood burning fireplace. So that's going to take some homework in and of itself. Really, this is conceptual, but when the plans come to fruition, it's going to be one of those things that's going to dictate the width and the depth of it at that point, and be able to make sure how you put those in there are compatible with each other.
Okay.
Yeah. I know we decided not to do a non-venting fireplace. Most people don't like those. But I think there are a couple gas options that have direct vents that, maybe we can hide the direct vent out the side of the chimney somehow. And that way we can narrow the width at the top.
Marcus, when you bring it to the Historic Zoning Commission, a perspective that really shows what that chimney is going to look like from the street would be helpful.
From the street?
Okay. And I do think, I'll just say, I think the massing is spectacular for the addition, and I think you all nailed it in the porte-cochere. I would opt for my vote to be yes on the wood shingles. I would have to see some historic evidence that is used in that style of house when it was built. And another question I have for Randall, is it possible, Randall, on the driveway for them to put a strip of pavers or something to the property line? I know that parking on that street sometimes can just be a nightmare, and I was just trying to think of a way they might be able to get two cars, kind of pulled off the street.
Yeah, I understand that. I think that, to my knowledge, you can't have parking or a driveway extended to up to the property line. It has to remain 5 feet from the property line.
5 feet from, okay. I didn't know.
Yeah, that's correct. And it's something we can check into, but I believe that is the requirement in the municipal code.
Yes, it is.
And we also have, we have to be really careful here because the LSA, the landscape surface area on the property, is limited to 40%. And if they're proposing 36%, then we don't really have a lot of wiggle room in terms of hardscape on the property.
Marcus, this is Ken Scalf. I've got a few questions on the on the porte-cochere. I assume you're raising the finished floor elevation to closer to what the finished floor is in the house. And is there an opening in that wall that allows the residents to come from inside the house into that porte-cochere?
Yes, there's an existing door.
It's kind of right here.
It's kind of included by that column. The plan for the finished floor elevation is to do some sort of sand bed with pavers on top that then are flush out into the exterior patio. So it'll raise it, let's say, 6 inches max. Hopefully that'll allow us to tweak the stairs a little bit because they're very steep right now. I think that's a good question because we have not decided what to do about the stairs. We do, as I said, about the sand bed and the pavers. That's our plan for the finished floor.
And another thing, the corners on this, you indicated the corners on the siding are mitered. Is that typical for construction in the historic district?
It is not.
You would prefer to have corner board with Hardie?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Would that be something that would stop us? Sort of a clunkier look.
I think it would be more appropriate to be more consistent with the buildings adjacent. That's what the guidelines would recommend.
And my last comment is I love the massing of the fireplace, but it just appears to be maybe a little more contemporary than the history of the house.
Okay. The thought was it sort of stands by itself from the house with the addition. Does that make sense? Making it distinct, but also tying in. Are you sort of suggesting maybe a little less contemporary and still be distinct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I understand the steel frame look. It's the old steel frame where the glass is puttied in place that you're kind of looking at for the sunroof.
thin.
It appears the front and the back are flush with the arched portion, and then the side is actually recessed. What is the case there?
I think I would ask the committee what they think the best result is there. I know we've floated having it fit in that opening perfectly. I think that's kind of the way it's drawn right now. I know we've talked to Amanda about setting it back from the existing columns. That does present a little more difficulty in how do you tie it into the ceiling
Right.
and get your vents and stuff in there. I don't know if anyone's ever come out and said directly what they prefer.
I think that maybe when I look at this rear elevation, it appears to be flush, and I don't know what the depth of the underside of that arch is, but I would say if it was
Okay, the depth it's probably at least 8 to 12 inches, maybe more.
So maybe if that window wall was located further back, maybe at the back edge or in the center, depending on, to get some reveal of that arch element.
Right. Okay, I see what you're saying now. That one closest to us feels like it's set back based on the columns, and then that one feels very flush. Yep.
So this one looks set back, these look flush.
Marcus, please go back to that, your transition from the house into the porte-cochere. How's that going to work again? Because it was before, when we first looked at this the last time, it was going to be, part of that wall was going to be marked out because this was going to be a kitchen, I think. But,
yep, we're leaving that entire wall and using the existing opening.
All right, but transition me from the house down to the floor of the new floor.
Okay, so if you're inside the house standing at the existing door, we will rehab that wood door. There is a set of stairs right there. They probably are, let's say, 12-inch risers.
I remember
they're really steep. And then you will land on the new pavers, which will be laid in a sand bed on top of the existing slab.
Okay, so you're kicking that existing floor up about what, 6-8 inches?
Yep.
All right, so you'll probably go to what, 3 steps to come down then, maybe?
That's what we're hoping. Like we said, those stairs are not code, and they're really steep. I guess
No,
I'm hoping that we can sort of alter them, and they're not historic.
So one of the reasons that Jim is asking this question and can ask his question is because of the reversibility factor. They're trying to assess how reversible the structure could be in its entirety. Whether, like, if the floor being raised could be reversible, that kind of thing.
That's what, if he's putting on a sand base and it's up about 6 or 8 inches, and it ties into this new patio that they've got there, so that's fine. I guess my other, and that would be the only change inside that porte-cochere area, other than the windows, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The other thing.
Well, actually, we might sort of frame a finished ceiling in there.
Okay.
I'm blanking on the way it is right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I am concerned about the roof, though, and I think that's been expressed as to changing it, because I'm looking at the guidelines and it says not to do that or to preserve it where you can. So I think that Lisa made that comment a minute ago, and I think that is important. I mean, it might be painted, but I would have to know some compelling reason to why we switch this thing. This looks nice in a picture, but I think we need some compelling reason about why you change from the existing standing seam metal roof.
Okay. Okay. Right now, I don't believe we have one. We actually thought the wood shingles, as they age and get their character, would lend themselves more to the stone cottage and the historic feel of the area. I guess we thought the metal.
This is not a deal breaker for me, Marcus. I'm concerned about it, that we need to know exactly why we would want to change to a cedar shake from a standing seam metal roof. And I know we have an addition back there that you got to deal with, but still that, I mean, that's a concern. And you'll just have to think some more about that.
And the only other question I had too, as I'm thinking through, is, and I'm gonna change the screen a little bit. And it's hard to kind of see here, but looking through to the garage would be the door for the garage. I know they're not using it as a garage, obviously. It's framed to look like the enclosure for the porte-cochere and for the addition. The guidelines would recommend that, infill structures would have, doors of historical equivalent. If this were designed to look more like a carriage style door, would that be more appropriate? That kind of thing. So I just wondered if the commission had strong thoughts about, this looking more like a glass enclosure and less like a door.
Any comments from anybody on that?
I know you're not really going to see it so well from the street.
I will say from a design standpoint, I think the glass is beautiful, but from a precedent standpoint, I would be concerned. I think the carriage style doors, which can maybe be a little in between, would be more appropriate.
Okay.
Do we think those need to feel like a garage door? That little side is probably 10 feet, 10.5 feet wide. So an 8-foot door would leave us, with a foot on either side.
I think sometimes, Marcus, what happens is like we have folks, and I'm not saying that's what you're doing here. We have folks that are kind of try to do that industrial, that trendy industrial look, where they have big modern steel doors they put on historic homes. We don't typically approve those. And here, I know you're going for something a little different because you're not trying to use this as a garage. You're trying to use it more as an auxiliary use. I think if you were to propose something that was more of a carriage style door that just had a lot of glass as opposed to an actual door, I think that would be a very strong compromise.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree, and I just wondered if the other commissioners could comment on, or anyone who's interested, the stone that seems to be like part of the patio there. Again, yeah, that. I mean, that looks nice, but again, I wonder if you're trying to match the old stone. I'm concerned that it's not going to look right, and perhaps something that contrasts more so that you're not trying to make it look like the historic part. And in addition to that, the stone that's on the foundation, it looks like you're going to try to match that as well. Could you comment on that?
Well, what I'll say really quickly is we won't be reviewing the stone on at the at grade. We typically don't do that, but okay. I do understand your comment on the base, and that was a comment I made on the initial review that we would require a sample.
Okay.
But Marcus, please comment if you will like.
Yeah, our idea has been to salvage the stone off of the rear wall that's being demoed. And then depending on the condition it's in and what size it is, try to tie in newer stones to kind of make it blend. But I do understand the concern from several committee members about trying to match the stone. So I think we'll review that with our contractor to see if it's actually going to be able to be truly matched, or if we need to find something that's more contrasting. And the patio, I think we're heading toward a peacock paver, which will definitely be in contrast to that brown stone that's existing.
Okay.
So there is an existing chimney that's brick, and now that I'm thinking more and more about it, and I'd love to get the commissioner's feedback as well. And I know Jim's timer went off, so we kind of need to move on. How would the owners, and I'd love for you guys to chime in, how would you feel about a brick chimney back there instead of a stone one if it's really hard to match the stone?
What do you think? I don't really know why. Not sure. I do like the stone look. I do think it does fit in with the stone look of the house that is there. And I think if I'm walking by the street and I'm looking through the porte cochere and I see that out back, it's like, wow, that looks cool. To me, if you do a brick fireplace, that looks like more, to me, you added that later than maybe trying to match the look of what we already had there in the stone house.
Okay. I understand that.
Yeah.
Just sometimes I know it's really hard to match stone, and I don't want you to be in a situation where you look at it later and you're like, it's close, but it's not quite close enough where it's going to bother you. Sometimes when we're in these situations, we recommend that if you can't match it, you just go with something different.
And actually, our guidelines recommend against making the house look consistent, but rather make it look like it was changed over time.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Sure. Some sort of stone look, though. I really do. And speaking to the roof, if it has to be metal, and we can go with a black metal roof, and that's fine too. I know that here that the builders, there's a house over near the Methodist church that has that same wood shingles on it. Almost kind of the the mirroring of it.
Right. Kind of the inspiration.
Right.
Well, I think if you can find, what is the date on this cottage?
1937, I think.
Yeah, I think if there is a similar simple cottage that you can show shakes on, at least for me, that would matter. If you can find a house of the same period that shows they were built in that style, I honestly just don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
May not be.
Yeah. Go visit some shakers up north, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. I would not let, like, if we need to brick the fireplace in the back, that's not a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Because you can sort of whitewash brick to, I don't know. I think we would have options there if we need to look at that.
I was just suggesting it if it was difficult, because like Marcus said, he was trying to reuse stone from the demoed wall, and I don't think you're going to have enough to build that fireplace.
I would agree. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right. So, do the commissioners have any other questions? And Amanda, you want to wrap up as to what you have heard that we need?
Sure. Staff will, we'll have to recommend against the porte cochere, but we'll note that it is definitely more of a reversible alteration than previously proposed. I think that the owners and the applicant have made every consideration possible within with the comments made by the DRC and the staff to try to remedy that within their proposal so that it can be reversible. That we'll be able to recommend approval for the addition for the size. I will need additional information on the the roofing proposal. I do know that the guidelines would support keeping the existing roof unless there's compelling historical information to suggest that that roof was not there historically, or was well, that's how the guidelines read, that if it was an original roofing material, it would need to stay. I will recommend that the chimney be altered to be narrower if possible. And so I would encourage Marcus to kind of look to see if that's something that can be done within the dimensions of what they're trying to do. I will ask that they try to accommodate a carriage style door that this really just has a lot of glass, and I know there's a lot of options out there that can accommodate that. And then the last consideration would be the infill area would really need to be a wood, and you know, just really make sure that it's marked clearly as wood and not a steel, even if it's a steel look. Because the guidelines would not support a steel enclosure. It would just need to be a wood enclosure. Does anyone else have any comments? We haven't heard from everybody. I want to make sure everyone that has any comments.
This is Susan. I just want to congratulate.
You're muted, Susan. You're muted.
I'm still sitting on the fence with the porte-cochere, but I think the addition is really compatible to the existing building and really suits the massing.
Thank you.
One more question I have. Is there a door from the rear of the porte-cochere to the patio? Because it's not showing.
Yes.
Yes, there will be.
Okay. You might want to show that.
That's a good question, Mary. Anything else?
Just quickly, Mr. Scaff had mentioned that the sort of contemporary modern lines on the chimney might want to be adapted to something a little bit more traditional. So if you could note that.
And Susan Besser, you had a question or comment.
I would like to see the floor plan along with this application.
Yes, and with some dimensions on the overall too,
Okay.
exterior. And then again, some pictured, or well, you've got it from the street. You've got a street view on your rendering, I think.
Am I still sharing screen?
No.
Okay, let me try that because I forgot to pull up the video that was sent to me. Sorry about that, Marcus.
While she's doing that, this is a dramatic improvement over what we saw, I think, before. So I congratulate you. Oh, that's great.
Sorry, Marcus. You sent that to me and I forgot. He worked hard on it, so I need to show it.
Well, yeah, that answers a lot of questions.
Here I can see that the face of the fireplace is concave out to the firebox, and that's kind of what I was referring to it being contemporary.
Right.
However, the stone that's being utilized back there doesn't really have any other adjacent stone to really compare it to, except for the one back column on the porte-cochere, the base. So I think if you choose your stone wisely, you could probably get close.
Cool.
Yeah, this really helps. Thanks
Yeah,
for.
this is great. This is
Yeah.
great. Where's that been all day?
I'm really sorry, guys. I got wrapped up in the discussion.
This so much lets you see what something's going to look like.
Oh, that's marvelous. Be sure that comes to the commission meeting.
Sure thing.
And I want to congratulate you guys. You guys have worked really, really hard, and it shows. It's an incredible project.
This is the one thing it is doing. It's making me really realize what Ken was saying. It kind of, the chimney just feels size-wise out of whack.
It is more of a contemporary style chimney, and that's because they are trying to accommodate two different fireplaces in it.
Right. And anchor that patio as an actual space to inhabit. But we'll play with it.
I think we're good then
Okay.
with everything, unless somebody's got something else. And we thank you again, Marcus and the Robinsons.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
for
you
all
all
your
for your
feedback
hard
in this
work.
process.
Yeah, great improvement.
Okay, I'll follow up with you guys tomorrow. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one. Bye.
Okay. Next, new construction at 440 Boyd Mill Avenue, Preston Shea.
All right, we have with us Preston, and we also have John Montgomery, who is the property owner and builder. And we also have with us Mr. Kelso, who is the potential buyer for the property. John and Kurt, are you guys with us?
I'm here. This is Kurt.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
John, are you here?
John sent me a text. He said he was driving, so he may not be able to be a part.
Okay.
But I think that's okay. I'll be able to speak to anything John may.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure. I know we've been talking a while, so he might have gotten distracted.
I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I will go ahead and pull up your item if you want to go ahead and get started.
Sure. So we came before the Design Review Commission last month and had, a fairly loose sketch of the exterior of the home, had an individual site plan drawn, and we took the commission's comments to heart. If I can sort of recap the things we discussed, or I guess specific items we addressed per the design review's recommendations. One of the items was the scale of the garage and the orientation of the garage. And we have since rotated that garage to face the side of the home. So it's no longer forward facing and cuts down on the overall width of the house.
Now, Preston,
a
do
solid.
you need to pull up what you just recently sent me, or the first one?
The first one at the moment, please. Yes, so next page maybe. Yeah, so in this image, we have rotated the garage to face the side, and Amanda was kind enough to send some infill building guidelines, and specifically regarding the garages. They're generally detached. New garages should appear detached. So we've added a little span of a glazed in portion just to the bottom right of the tree that you see there, and then the garage would face sideways. So hopefully we're in keeping with this guideline number 22. Since the initial submittal, we have lowered the overall height of the home by a couple feet. We've made the entry component far more subtle and more traditional. I believe there was comment to the home appearing maybe a little contemporary, a little aggressive. So we've made the character of the home a bit more subtle. We have lowered roof pitches fairly well universally. So I hope that helps remain in keeping with a colonial revival style. And regarding the site plan, Amanda, if you'll go up one frame, 2 frames, I'm sorry. Or maybe up was the other direction.
You said up. Okay.
Yeah, so there we are. Yeah. And so
do you want me to zoom
we
in?
have, would you please? Our initial submittal showed more of a more formal entry procession with parking in front, and upon recommendation by the commission, we're showing a smaller, a little more meandering, sort of a lane that would be, we'd spot plant just to add a little separation between the subject property and 440 Boyd Mill, which is the property behind which this home would be partially placed. I would ask regarding the issue of site and placement of the home. Amanda also sent the note number 9, in compliance with the zoning ordinance, we reinforce and maintain existing setbacks of adjacent structures. I would ask that the commission recognize that there really is a wide variation in Boyd Mill, and that Boyd Mill was developed over a long period of time with no real intentional setback in place. Amanda, if you'll zoom out a little bit.
Sure.
There we go. That should be close enough. Yeah. So the far bottom right-hand corner, Boyd Mill, we've got a couple very small cottages, in front of Sharp Branch there. Moving to the left, we have some apartment buildings. And Amanda, actually, could you pull up that secondary PDF? I've got a lot of these notes on that because I know it's probably hard for the commission to follow.
Sure, I'll have to stop sharing for a minute and pull that up.
Sure. Okay. I hope everybody can see the notes that I've added here.
I'm going to try to go back to where you were.
Still kind of pan and work with.
Okay.
Yeah, so bottom right, we've got some pretty small houses tight to the street. We've got an apartment building. We've got a stretch of 3 new houses. We've got a ranch house. And then we've got a stretch of 4 new and old cottages. And that really is the only consistent streetscape on Boyd Mill, and certainly on our side of Boyd Mill. And I'm going to touch on this in a minute, but there's a pause between these cottages that you can almost think of as sort of a cottage row. There's a pause between those and what I've denoted as the historic 2-story home, which is 440 Boyd Mill. And between that is a great green space. There's a great stone wall, and there's just a real nice pause in the history of Boyd Mill, the massing of the houses, and just the breadth and a sort of a refreshing moment where houses aren't tightly packed as they are on the stretch of cottages. And then of course, moving on down the road, there are houses deeper on the lot. There's a historic home on acreage.
Well, this is a historic home too, and then there's this Magnolia Hall.
Yeah, Magnolia Hall has escaped me for a moment. And then again, on the other side of the street, we can see condos and apartments, non-historic neighborhoods, and working back, we have examples of a house behind a house pretty well across the street at the captain's quarters. Moving on beyond that is Benelli Court, which is an entire neighborhood carved out of a property akin to what the Kelsos are trying to put a single family home on. So my hope with this aerial is just to really emphasize how widely varied in time, architecture, massing, setbacks, that Boyd Mill actually is. And I'm really sorry that the commission wasn't allowed to convene on site, because I think it would be pretty obvious from that. So the Kelsos, the subject property is between what I've labeled as historic two-story home, which is 440, and the new and old cottage. So the subject property is between these two homes. And I would argue that bringing a home directly between those two homes would actually be detrimental to the streetscape. It wouldn't allow 436, which is the first cottage. It wouldn't allow any breathing room there. It would take out a strong row of trees between the historic home and the first cottage there on the right.
Is it, you talking about this one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And the owner there at 436 is actually in favor of our keeping the new structure a little further back. It would preserve a stand of trees. And again, we wouldn't visually encroach on that house. You know, there's, the historic home is, I think, about 44 feet tall. The cottage, the first cottage there is about 24 feet tall. You know, and we would shoot to be somewhere in between, but even still, it would overshadow that house to a degree. You know, there's no perfect line between, or no perfect 10% between both those homes. So, you know, naturally we would be shorter than one, taller than the other, and it would be, I think, imposing on the cottage where that Amanda's hand is resting there. The Kelsos didn't want to compete with the historic home on the neighborhood, home or homes on the neighborhood. They wanted to take advantage of their property, which is a large property and really atypical for downtown Franklin, just in its scale. There's a orange line there, left to right at the top of the page. This property extends further back from Boyd Mill than the entirety of the Vandalia development, just to give you an idea of the scale. And certainly the Kelsos don't want to turn their back or you know, cut themselves off from that property. They'd like to enjoy it. It's such a property that I would entertain, you know, even rotating our house to be less a part of the streetscape on Boyd Mill if the commission thought that would be a viable option. You know, either moving it back or rotating it just to feel maybe a little less part of the streetscape.
Preston, is it possible for the house to sit? It looks like it's kind of not quite straight to the street. Is it possible for it to be sited straight to the street?
Yes, ma'am. We could tweak that rotation.
Okay. And then you're suggesting that you turn, I'm trying to understand, turn the whole thing like a fourth. Is that what you were saying?
Well, it was just kind of a wild idea. You know, if the static, if the difficulty we're having is that it's on the street, but not necessarily, you know, hemmed in between two houses.
But the way I understood you to say, it was an existing lot. Yes, it's permitted. Is that correct information?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. The other thing I would say, I feel like a better example of a house behind a house is to be had than talking about the captain's quarters. So I would take that off because that is so subservient to the house.
Yeah.
And you have the same situation when you drive in the new neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah. And I only mention that in that just to show how varied and in both time and development Boyd Mill is. Yeah. Not that we're trying to capture what they're after.
Well, you were using it as a house behind a house, but it's actually one lot, and that's actually very subservient. That was just what I'm saying.
Just to confirm for the zoning ordinance, is that the Rogers property?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's an accessory dwelling in the back. yard, which is permitted.
Right.
Yeah, and the home that we're proposing is also submitted, as Mary pointed out, this is a lot that conforms to all the zoning and fits within the city code.
Well, the lane went a long way with part of my concern and getting the garage not on the front of the house. But I would like to see the house straightened because I think it just makes the house look larger when it's a little bit off.
Sure.
Preston, what is the actual visibility from Boyd Mill? That's
about 2/3 of the home would be directly visible. Amanda, if you could go to the other image showing the front elevation.
Okay, I need to stop sharing screen and change over.
Right. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
right
so
here.
the front elevation. Yeah, great. So everything from, see where the tree is shown, the large glass component being our connector between the home and the garage. So everything from there to the left would be concealed. It's directly behind 440.
okay.
And then moving to the right, that's the portion that would address Boyd Mill.
Would it be possible to show something that visibly shows that to us?
Oh yes, ma'am. I'll do an overlay of the home shaded in front of this home, or the part that is in front of.
And Mary, you're asking a view from the street.
Yeah,
so if
from
you're on the
Boyd Mill.
street, yeah,
I
looking.
think that's more what they're looking for,
Yeah.
Preston. Actually, a view from the street.
Yeah, I'll do that.
'Cause I think the depth will matter, and I don't know what what is the elevation of the property from Boyd Mill to the location of the house.
Elevation as in finished floor elevation?
Does it fall back? Does the property fall back, or does it rise up from?
Right.
It does. It falls. It falls back probably 7 feet or so off Boyd Mill.
So that would be helpful to be able to put that into context with
Yes.
the elevation and the of the land versus the height of the building.
Will do.
I did go out to Boyd Mill and took some photographs of the surrounding houses. I feel that the original house, or the historic house, is really a Georgian colonial. And I don't know that this necessarily, it maybe speaks more to the cottages.
Well, we had intended for this home just to be an acceptable style that was not as formal, not as impressive as that existing home. So which naturally led us to a 1.5-story home, which we would, I think, need to be in to fit between the two homes regardless. So we weren't necessarily trying to match the style as much as choose an acceptable style that would allow us to reduce the perceived height of the home. Because again, the Kelsos never wanted to compete. They've always wanted to, sort of play nicely and, sort of subtly work their home into downtown Franklin and not make a big splash, which I think would make a big splash if we tried to hem it in directly between the two homes.
Is the house located on the lot at the same location as the first proposal?
I'm sorry, you broke up on me just a second.
I said, is the house located on the lot in the same location as the first proposal, other than rotating the garage?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Let me stop sharing screen for a second and switch over. I was looking at this earlier, and Kelly refreshed my memory on the zoning ordinance a little bit. Preston was talking to me about trying to address the garage a little bit and trying to make it appear more detached. And I was looking at it on here, and then I was looking at it on the aerial, and it needs to be. And Kelly, refresh my memory, please. Either Kelly. Either of the or any of the three Kellys on transitional features and how the garage needs to be in relation to the entrance or the front wall of the house.
The garage needs to be placed behind the dwelling, so it doesn't have to be entirely behind, but it definitely it has to be behind the primary plane. So as it currently stands, I don't think that would meet transitional features.
So it needs to be behind the front plane of the house. So the front plane is not considered here. It's considered this wall here.
Well, the transitional features don't use the language that's similar to the guidelines. It just says that garages should have traditional placement behind the primary dwelling. Kelly Dannenfelser, do you have anything to add on that? I mean, it's just behind.
You got the intent. It's saying that it should be traditionally placed behind the main mass of the main part of the house. Sometimes it can be either detached behind the house, or it can be attached toward the back of the house with a breezeway or a connector, but something that really pushes the garage element back away from the main mass of the house so that it's traditionally placed on the property.
Well, I don't know if I would say that this is behind the main mass of the house.
No.
Yeah.
Preston, this is Lisa Marquardt. Is there a reason it's not behind the main house?
Well, it is. I don't know if Amanda can zoom in there.
Sure, certainly.
Yeah, it gets into sort of a gray area in the zoning. It's behind a portion of the house. It's about 15 feet behind a portion of the home. It is separated by about a 15-foot pause. It now faces the side. It has sort of an infill component. So I would say that it's very much in a traditional location or traditionally placed. So the big question is, the spirit of, whether that's, behind a perceived plane or whether it's behind the house. And I would argue it's behind the house and traditionally located, but certainly if we're not in compliance there, that's something we'll look at.
And there's two different sets of standards we're looking at here. We're looking at the regulations of the zoning ordinance, and that's what we're talking about right now. We're also looking at the historic district design guidelines. And the historic district design guidelines would argue that, it needs to be detached if it's in an area where garages are typically detached or have the appearance of being detached. And I think Preston's intent here was to try to give the appearance of being detached, and the guidelines would recommend that infill accessory structures would be to the side or in behind the principal structure. I still don't feel comfortable that this meets that intent because of the placement. So I don't believe that staff would be supporting the placement here as far as the historic district design guidelines are concerned. I do respect the what Preston's done with the connector here and having it more open and trying to give the appearance of being like a semi-detached, but it to me is not traditionally placed enough because it's not recessed enough in relation to what you see in the context of the neighborhood.
Well, getting away from the garage a minute, Preston, your idea that you mentioned to turn the house so the narrow side was to the historic neighborhood. I think that personally, you'd have to, of course, evaluate it for what the view sheds and everything were from the house. I understand that, but I sure think it's worth thinking about. I think it could be amazing.
Yeah, and that was sort of I have not discussed that with the Kelsos, and I know Kirk is watching, so I'm sorry. You know, I was honestly just throwing all ideas out there if how it addressed the street was going to be a real sticking point. But I think given topography, the lot does continue to fall. So this, as far as tree saves, as far as getting near a creek, so this I think
is the best.
It is. This takes advantage of topography, existing tree lines. This is the best of all worlds.
And if the lot falls and you can show that, that matters.
Yeah, it does. We'd end up with a full basement if we tried to rotate it or push it too far back. If I could back up a second to Amanda's comment. Amanda, is there a line, a visual line in your mind that would get us to where we need to be?
Yes, I think the front plane of the house is really around here.
Okay.
And I think that the garage needs to start at least there or behind there.
Okay.
Just in my opinion, that would be considered the front plane of the house, and typically what you're seeing in the historic districts is that the garage starts behind the front plane of the house.
Okay.
What, Kelly, do you guys have any opinions on that?
I am opening up the zoning ordinance right now, so give me just a moment.
While you're doing that, right, does anybody else have any other questions related to this?
I will say that the mass and scale seems to me inconsistent with the area. Maybe that'll feel differently when we get those renderings that you mentioned where we can see it from the street. I understand that this is a unique property, but it still feels very massive in comparison to especially the adjacent property. That would be my comment.
Oh, just briefly while she's getting ready. The trees that are shown here, these are proposed, correct?
Yes, sir. The ones that are more vivid in color,
right?
Those would be proposed. The Kelsos wish to give a little visual separation from the very large, very new garage addition to 440.
Well, that just reinforces what I was going to say. I mean, obviously, you're showing mature trees, and it's going to be years before they're this size.
Sure.
I'm just kind of puzzled why you're not pushing it a little bit further back on the lot, because it doesn't really have a proper front yard. I don't consider the leg that's coming back up to Boyd Mill to be the front yard.
Sure. That's certainly something we can look at. The topography again it starts dropping and it just goes straight down. There's a little creek down at the base. So part of what we were trying to avoid was to just get too far down the hill, and we wanted to also preserve as many of the trees behind as we could. We didn't want to go out clearing a half acre worth of trees if we didn't need to. And that was honestly part of my reasoning for keeping the garage where it is. That left side, front and to the left, is the highest part of the property. So if we start pushing the garage back, we start taking out additional trees, add retaining and sort of building up the garage. So
but you're really Preston, I think you're really talking about, if that thing is pushed back, you're talking about 20, I'm guessing 20 feet maybe?
Sure, probably.
At the most. I don't know how far it falls off as you get behind that house, but it's to Ken's point about there not being much of a front yard, I would agree with that based on what I see here.
Sure.
So if that thing can be pushed back, that helps in a lot of areas.
Yeah, I think we can move it back a little. I don't think the Kelsos would have issue with that at all.
That's a,
I
that's a
would
good
agree
point.
with what Ken said, and then straighten it also.
Okay.
And the zoning ordinance and transitional features does say that proposed development for garages, the garages with traditional placement and orientation entirely behind the main structure and subordinate in height. That's in order to blend the new residential development with existing buildings along the same block face.
I didn't catch the middle portion of that.
I'm not sure what the middle part was.
I'm sorry.
That proposed residential development, and I'll just read the whole thing so that you have all of it.
Thank you.
And we can send it to you too, Preston. We'll send you the link.
Proposed residential development blend with existing buildings along the same block face through use of, it talks about dormers that are set back a minimum of 1 foot from the exterior wall, from the front or side elevation, massing that divides the building into smaller parts, materials that do not accentuate verticality, a 1-story front porch or entry element, garages with traditional placement and orientation entirely behind the main structure and subordinate in height.
Okay, and that's what maybe it wasn't the middle, maybe it was the end. Entirely behind the main structure. Certainly that doesn't mean literally put the garage in the backyard, but you mean wholly behind.
It typically does.
The front plane.
It typically does mean that it is behind the main mass of the house. And we're in this situation because this house is really essentially a backyard of a lot that has been created. So if the building were up at the line of the other buildings along the street, it would fit in that the garage is behind the house because the lot would be narrower at that point and would better accommodate where that garage should go, and that placement is a traditional placement for a garage in the historic district.
Right. This house would not fit here as the guidelines would recommend it be placed because the mass wouldn't fit and the placement wouldn't allow for it.
Yeah, and that's, I think that sort of gets into just how atypical this lot and the scale of this lot is.
Mm-hmm. So I think what the commission really has here is a situation where, staff has to recommend, that the house be placed where, it's in line. And Preston's correct in the sense that not everything here is in perfect alignment. This house sits further back than here, but there is, in my opinion, a general, regularity of alignment through here that we would, anticipate that the house fall into somewhere in this area. And then, the recommendation would be that it fit here. So this location is not supported by the guidelines. And if this home were to be placed here, it really wouldn't fit. And so the form itself could not be supported. So the commission would it's more of a theoretical consideration. It's like, is the context appropriate given the lot or not?
Yeah,
I agree. Is this wide, which I'm guessing it is, wide enough through here that you could just put a big infill development back here?
Yep.
Now the owner of the previous owner of the lot lived right here, and he did have discussions with staff about doing that. I was only part of a couple of those conversations, and I think he just decided against that. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe Ms. Dannenfelder knows more.
I guess I'm asking because that would make a difference to me on my considerations of this.
I am so glad Mary brought that up because I believe the options here are
Infill development back here. Is that wide enough?
The previous owner did look at options for trying to develop additional lots back here. There were some challenges. I don't recall what those were specifically, but in the end, they decided to split the lot into the two lots.
Right.
And the one with the existing house.
Yeah, I think as far as the city's concerned, is this need to be a single lot or developed into a multiple lot subdivision, and I don't think anybody wants to see that.
So where are we on the garage? I'm not clear as to what Kelly Dannenfelder is saying and what Amanda is saying. And does this thing can it simply be pushed back, let's say for just conversation purposes, 20 feet and get it in line with the front plane of the house? Or do we have to, or are they looking at having to move it completely behind the back of the house?
Well, Kelly Gibson is our transitional feature reviewer, and I am the historic zoning reviewer. And my interpretation from the historic district design guidelines is that I couldn't recommend approval based on what's shown. And what Kelly Dannenfelser read, and I'll let Kelly Gibson make her interpretation, but it doesn't sound to me like the transitional features support that either.
That's correct. It would have to be moved behind the house, the garage.
Is there any
It seems
any way
like that's something that I think Preston and the city need to clarify with each other before we look at it as a commission. I just don't, I mean, I don't know where we are on that. From a practical standpoint, I'm seeing this house set back so far from Boyd Mill that I don't think you're going to see much, and Preston attested to that. I think we'll need to see some documentation to that. But it would seem like if he moves the garage somewhat back further, that we're accomplishing the spirit of what you're trying to get to in that in the guidelines. Now, I may be completely off base, but I just think this thing is set back so far. And the way the topography, and that's what we're going to have to see some more specifics, but I just don't think you're going to see as much of this house as what we think.
I agree, and I plan to illustrate that. And one other thing to consider is if we do detach or semi-detach and push this behind the house, then the garage can, according to the city standards, be forward facing, and would honestly need to, lest it be, 12 feet up in the air.
Yeah. Well, I think, Preston, I'm just going to suggest that you and Amanda and Kelly Gibson and Dannenfelder get together and with whoever else and try to reach a solution to that.
Thank you.
Before it comes back to, that's just my opinion on this, because I just think we have a very unique situation here. And I think we've got to remember this is with this, it's a flag lot, so it's a big lot, and it's set back.
Well, has everyone given their feedback as a committee member?
Well, that was my next question.
We've heard from Ms. Marquardt, we've heard from Mr. Roberts, we've heard from Mr. Scalf, Ms. Besser, Mr. Carson, Mr. Hathaway's here.
Yep.
And you guys have any feedback?
Right. Yeah. We're running behind, and we need to.
Baker Heffley.
Yeah, this is Jeff. Just real quick, I agree with Jim. I want to see the topographical view, and I do feel like you're going to get the advantage of a perspective from the street, that it's not going to be as noticeable. That surely there's some accommodations that we can make, given that, and that it is a unique lot. That I would certainly prefer a single family home as opposed to an infill development.
Absolutely.
So whatever we can do we can get there, and we'll just need to put a little bit more into it.
Thank you, Mr. Carson. What about you, Ms. Besser? Do you have any additional comments?
I think that Preston addressed the context of the design for me really well. And I think if this is one of those situations where, again, I'm with the other commissioners, I would prefer to see a single house as opposed to a infill development.
Thank you. Ms. Baker-Hafley.
I would echo what everybody else is saying. You know, this is a very large lot, and it's understandable why they would want to put a home back there versus up close to Boyd Mill. And I would rather it be a single family home than a large, or even a small development. Once we get more information on what's expected with where the garage is aligned with the home and getting that clarified, I think I'll feel pretty comfortable, especially given the topography.
Hey, Mr. Hathaway, I noticed you're able to call in. Are you able to speak to us? Do you have any comments?
He might not be still with us.
I don't know if he's able to connect, so I just want to give him opportunity. All right, and everyone, has everyone spoken that wanted to? Mr. Kelso, did you have any comments?
No, I just wanted to thank you guys for the opportunity to let Preston present what we're hoping to do. And we certainly respect and want to accommodate, downtown Franklin. On a side note, I grew up in Franklin more years ago than I care to admit, but can appreciate preserving downtown area, certainly because I've seen it grow to heights I never would have dreamed of back in the 70s. So I guess I did wind up showing my age a little bit, but hopefully we can get this worked out where we build something that's fulfills the standards that you guys have set forth, and do it in a classy manner. So thanks everybody for your time, and thanks Preston for laying it out for everyone.
Well, thanks for joining us. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you all too.
Amanda, you got anything else you want to add before we move on?
I don't. I will say that we'll continue to work with Preston on the garage orientation and placement.
We'll get there, I think, Preston.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you all. All right. Last but not least, addition and alterations parking at 128 4th Avenue North. Amanda McCrary.
Hi,
There
Miss
she is.
Amanda. Thanks for joining.
Hi.
Hi there. Thank you.
All
Okay.
right. So Amanda's joining us back. She had started a project last week with a window replacement and a side porch in-kind repair and replacement for the house at 128 4th Avenue North. And now she's working with Mr. Ritson, the owner, to begin a proposal for a rear and side
I lost your
addition.
voice.
So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up and let Amanda,
Amanda,
go ahead
I
and start
can't
talking about.
Yeah, she froze. Screen
Okay.
froze.
Oh, I froze. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, my internet's unstable. It's telling me. So so what I said was Amanda continued to. She worked on the project last week, as you all know. She's continuing to work with Mr. Ritson on a rear and right side addition for the house. And while I am pulling that up, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to begin explaining the project.
Hey guys, I'm not too excited to follow Mr. Brooks's renderings that he had. He really did a nice job there. So we do have some massing models, but they are very basic. So this is the project we had talked about in the last couple of months with the window replacement. So this is what we're calling phase 2. And it is going to be, we're looking to do some parking on the left side with a ramp entrance on the rear of that parking and an addition off of the rear and right side of the property. I don't know, honestly, from the parking standpoint, I know the ramp will need to go through some approval and talk through that, but I didn't know from the parking standpoint as much of what we need to submit. We're proposing a concrete surround and a pea gravel system with interlacing structure that holds the pea gravel that we can also use to mark the spaces. And you can see towards the top side of that drawing a ramp to get us into the rear door, as opposed to building a ramp on the front side of the property. We are proposing to put it in the rear. At this point, we don't have any elevations of the ramp, but we are thinking wood construction. The front porch is currently wood and the side porch is wood, so we felt wood would be appropriate. I haven't had a moment to think through. Ooh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't had a moment, my earbuds went off, to think through the railings, but I'm thinking wood on those as well. Hold on 1 second. I think my earbuds died. I just want to make sure you guys can continue to hear me.
Yeah, you're
Yes.
coming in loud and clear.
Okay, good. So that's what we have from the site perspective before we get to the addition.
Can I make some comments here really quickly?
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
go.
I apologize. I was directed to get some comments from engineering, and I realize now that I forgot to do that. So Kelly Dannenfelser may need to jump in and help remind me of some things, and I will get some comments from them super ASAP. But there are some things you may need to consider before you submit this for an application. Pea gravel is not an acceptable material for a site plan for a non-residential project. You will not be able to do pea gravel, so that will need to be changed to an ADA acceptable material. And you will not be able, per zoning, to have these, at least this first parking spot, maybe even the second one, because you can't have parking that's forward of the face of the building.
Okay.
Okay, Kelly, can you remind me of anything else that we had talked about with this? I'm so sorry that I forgot to contact Lance.
That's all right. I think you got it. The parking can be in that side yard, but can't be in front of the front facade of the house.
And that is based on the standards in the downtown district, Amanda. I can send those to you, but how it states in the downtown district, that's the zoning district classification for this site.
Okay, and we were looking at the downtown district and all of that too. So we also, it looks like for any part of the addition, which is around 1,000 square feet, we have to provide 4 parking spots per 1,000, so 4 per 500, which is 8 parking spots. So if we're losing parking spots, do we know? I don't want to take up that entire yard, like take up the left side yard and take up the right side yard to meet parking requirements.
We can get you in touch with a planner better qualified to speak to that. I'm not equipped to speak to parking standards. I apologize, but I can definitely get you in touch with someone first thing tomorrow morning.
Okay, because I just didn't also know from a historic standpoint, does it make a difference from the parking as far as if we can't fit all 8 spots in, how much of the site? I think there's some work we'll have to coordinate there.
You are only trying to park what you're adding, correct?
You park what you add according to the downtown.
Yeah, you're not
district.
trying to park the existing, you're just trying to park what you add. Okay.
Yep.
Oftentimes a building addition or a building in general, the limiting factor is parking. Common throughout the city, and that you maybe can build a building that covers most of the site, but if it can't be parked, then the building scale has to come down to match what it can be parked with. Now in downtown, it lets you count the spaces on the street in front of the house that are in front of your lot, and then also what you can park on the lot itself. So take that into consideration. If there are any on-street parking spaces in front of the lot, those can count towards the parking requirement as well.
Is this new part of the new zoning ordinance for downtown?
It's using frontages, so it doesn't really change what is allowed from the old ordinance to this one, but it is structured differently than in the old ordinance.
And Kelly, my earbud went out for a minute again. I think my batteries are dying. I just want to make sure what you said about parking, that counts towards even my addition that I'm adding.
The spaces, so your existing building isn't required to have any spaces if this is changed in it.
Got it.
If you add on to a building, you're required to have the parking for the addition.
Right.
So that additional square footage is what you need to calculate your parking on. The new ordinance does allow what is on street in front of the lot, and also what you can accommodate.
Okay.
As long as it's behind the building line.
Right.
Got it.
So we know for a fact that space number 1 that you're showing here would not be able to be counted. Like you cannot build that one. Space number 2, I'm thinking is probably not, like, I'm not really sure if the way you built this or drawn this,
That's the front porch line and the front of that front gable where we lose those 2 windows that we had talked about last time.
okay, so this is behind the front porch.
It is behind the front porch and behind that front gable. And so is that parallel spot.
Okay, so those would be fine, but not space number 1. Okay.
And we had thought too with and this might be something different between Franklin Code and just the accessibility code. But with the accessibility code, we thought that it was just the ADA space, and the access to that space needs to be, and it does need to go to the street. Ben's confirming. I have people.
I would contact Shanna.
Okay.
And I can help you with that too to confirm the paver material. But it's my understanding that pea gravel is not acceptable material for a non-residential.
Okay.
Because even though this is a house, you're using it and it's zoned as a non-residential site.
Okay.
How many trees are we losing?
How many trees are we losing? I think we're trying to keep most of them. That's why there's a space between 4 and 5.
Yeah.
And there's another one in the front at the street side.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think there's any trees lost in this plan.
Yeah, that's the reason why the spacing is off a little bit between 4 and 5.
Gotcha.
There's this, and I can pull up the street view if necessary, but there is a very large green space on the left side of this house.
And there's already a curb cut there too. So we're trying to align the actual drive with the curb cut. So we had a lot of pieces of the puzzle. We have an existing house and we have a curb cut that we're trying to align with. And I think the previous owners actually did park cars just in the grass and had thrown down gravel over there. So it was already cleared fairly well.
Clear. There's like a line of demarcation from that curb cut through the yard. Yeah.
There's also something else that engineering should weigh in on, which is the width of that drive aisle, and then, you know, whether or not it can meet the turning radii to get back.
Width of the drive aisle.
So that's something else that we'll want to get additional staff feedback on.
Okay.
It appears that if this lot is full and you don't have the advantage of any other parking spaces, that the only way out of this from your parking space is to back all the way back to the street. Is that correct?
That is correct. To back out into the street.
Some people don't possess those skills.
That's correct. We're tight to back out into the space, into the street.
We will definitely want to get engineering's feedback on that.
Okay.
I will get that.
Because backing out onto a street isn't generally accepted per engineering standards.
Yeah. Okay, so do any of the commissioners have any comment on the proposed parking from a historic zoning standpoint? As Kelly Gibson mentioned earlier, for parking arrangements, the guidance would be on material and placement. Here, the placement is proposed on the left side of the building. This is a residential form in a non-residential zoning classification. It's proposed to align with an existing curb cut. And we already noted that it's inappropriate to have this lot space number 1 as shown here because it is in front of the house, and that's a zoning ordinance regulation, but that would also be something that I would have commented on from a historic zoning perspective as well, because we would want to preserve the yard frontage. The material is proposed to be pea gravel, which wouldn't necessarily be inappropriate from a historic zoning perspective, but may be inappropriate for other considerations. So I would advise the applicant to consider other historic common materials, which would be like a concrete or an asphalt, or even like a more of a softer, maybe like an aggregate type material. If any of the commissioners have any recommendations on that, it would certainly be a good time to bring those up.
I mean, only that, of course, it's almost like, I don't know if you want to come back to DRC again to, once you've clarified all the logistical aspects that we were talking about that need to be reviewed for other reasons. And then at that time, we can have a better idea on the materials that wouldn't be the gravel.
I think the materials are secondary to what you work out with engineering. That's what we're saying. So it's, at this stage of the game, we need to move on, because there's some other things to do.
I think we're going to be very limited in our material options based off of the engineering. So I agree with that.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think what Kelly and I think Ken said, I mean, just the functionality of it needs to get straightened out.
Yep.
Okay. Well, any concerns in general about the placement being there? I mean, there's really
you don't have a lot of options. Yeah. What's your option?
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next slide. Oh, and the ramp, I will say, sorry about that. I will say for the ramp, when it is brought in, we will need elevations of the ramp. And I know Mr. Curry knows that.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah, we'll do something appropriate there for sure.
All right.
Okay, Amanda.
So we are looking to propose an addition off the rear and right side yard. On this particular property, we are pretty close already to the rear setback line. So we do not have a lot of space to go towards the rear of the property. So we're looking to go to the rear and the right. So on the right side, there is this side porch, which is what you see, those 4 column pieces along the side, and a rear entry door. All of the existing footprint is hatched. So the new addition we're proposing on the right side be 2 feet off that corner from where the side porch is to where the new addition begins. We do have some undulation, some jogging of the forms along the building, and that's to allow some proper massing for the roof lines to tie in. And on the rear of the addition, we had originally showed in this meeting the addition starting off of the corner of the back porch in order to have that space, but we are short 1 office count. So we'd actually like to consider moving that left wall of the rear addition to the corner of the side porch. So it would still be off of the primary corner, but it would just continue from where that side porch is.
Amanda, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So how would that change the percentage of how much you're adding to the building?
I think we would probably have to, from a percentage standpoint, I still think we're fine because it's not that big. And if we have to move some of that form in, we can. I think the parking signs, we might have to be under 1,000 square feet. So we might just have to adjust some of the links coming in and out. So I think from a percentage standpoint, we'll be okay.
Okay. So right now, what percentage are you on? I didn't do the calculation. You provided you're adding.
I could do it, but I think we're definitely good. Hold on. I kind of like the Zoom calls because I'm able to check things back and forth really quick. We're at 42% is the addition size to the existing.
Okay. I know Zoom's really nice, isn't it?
It is nice in some ways. Some ways it's not, but some ways it's nice that I can pop back and forth to look at stuff.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about placement on this particular screen here? Or any questions for that matter on this screen?
And it might make more sense too if you just continue because you can see it in the 3 dimensions. So my disclaimer, we do have a second floor on the addition. We are proposing a second floor on addition, but from a roof line perspective, it still stays under the existing roof line. This particular existing structure has very tall ceilings. So we're able to do that and kind of live within the eaves on the second floor. But I can explain that more too if you want to continue, Amanda, so we can get to the massing. Excuse me. So these are massing models. There's no trim shown. This is just to give a sense of the space. So from a material standpoint, we're looking at doing a hardy siding on the addition. We would have the exposure height match the exposure height of the existing siding. The trim work would, some of the trim work was fairly detailed. I think we would be similar in size to the trim work, but maybe not as detailed on the windows. So from that perspective, obviously none of the trim is showing on this model, but you can get a sense of the addition to the right and to the rear. So there, the existing's on the bottom, and this is interesting. So this back portion that we are adding on to has a parapet wall, which I haven't worked on a project in Franklin of historic that has that. So this little L-shaped portion to the right on the bottom of existing is all parapet, and there's a low slope roof behind it. And so the addition proposed starts 2 feet off of that corner where the front porch, the side porch is, coming out with a gable end. And I do think we still need to tie in the roof lines between that corner that's existing and the new. And so that's why you see that small roof on the new.
Can you hear me? I think it just completely died. So the roof line here starts to play into the roof line of that parapet wall that was existing on that side.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you see some of those interesting pieces.
Right. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a really fascinating roof study. I would love to have known when they put in that parapet wall, because it's not typical of historic homes. And then if you scroll to the next page, you can see on the bottom right on the existing, again, you can see that parapet wall that comes through on that left side now as you're looking off the rear, and that rear porch that's been enclosed already on the right side. So looking at this elevation, we have a gable end on the left, again, to kind of balance the gable end that's on the right. And again, looking at maybe extending that back wall now to the corner of that side porch so we can get our additional office count that we need. But the second floor would be the same. And so in the second floor, we're proposing a dormer only off the rear, not the front or the sides, in order to get some added headspace up there so we can have a second floor to this structure. So my main goal today is I wanted to see if you guys feel that the massing is appropriate, and you know, we're going off to the right side and not just the rear, and just to get your feedback from that portion, from that perspective.
So let me make sure everybody is orientated. So does everyone understand? This is the front of the house. This is the front door. And what's existing is down here. So this is what you see from the street right now. And then this is obviously what's being added that you would see from the right side. And then on the back, what's existing is here. And then this is what's being added. Everyone clear on that?
Yep, go back a page. Amanda,
Sure.
go scroll up. Yeah. Well,
There we go.
Amanda McCreary, how far out does this proposed extension on the right stick? Right there. Those 4 windows, how far out is that?
I can tell you that because I'm at my computer. It's 19 feet, 10 inches.
And how big is the front face of the house?
51 feet, 4 inches.
This is 51 feet.
51 feet, almost 51 and a half.
Now, can you tell me where you're measuring that 51?
Yeah.
Now that is to the bay on the left side.
Okay, so what
And
I
I
think Mary needs to know is like from this corner to.
Yeah, it's really not in the picture.
Yeah, that's true. It's 47 feet, 4 inches.
From this corner over here
Yes.
to that corner right there.
Not including the side. Well, we're still
Not including the porch.
Yeah, from this side wall to this side wall.
It is 40 feet, 9 inches.
Okay, and then the addition is
19 feet.
19 feet.
So that's less than half.
Yeah, the rendering makes it look
It does. It does.
competing. And I was going to tell you, y'all, that when the historic preservation movement started in Franklin a couple of years before I got here, which I got here in the late 70s, these parapet walls were the most popular thing you could imagine. And there's still some of them around.
You know, I thought it was interesting. That's why I thought, well, I've got to tie in that roof somehow where we do that 2 foot back, kind of give it a little nod to that little parapet wall that was there.
I would like to see a better rendering that gives it more of a sense of the scale of the front to the addition, because right now that addition looks the same size as the house, but from your measurements,
It's not.
Yeah.
It's because you're hovered above as an isometric honed in on that side.
All right, go to the next page then, Amanda Rose. All right, let's look at some dimensions across his back then.
I just want to bring up something really quickly. I know that we have talked a lot about scale and not adding multiple stories to single story homes. That was something that was brought up quite a bit with one of our applicants that we had on this evening, and we've brought up with applicants before. So it would be really important to me if this were to move forward, that this be designed in a way that it's not a 2-story addition to a 1-story building, that it may be like a large dormer addition to a 1-story building, but that it not be designed to be a 2-story addition to a 1-story building.
And I tried to be mindful of that, so that dormer on the second part is stepped 2 feet back from that front edge, just like we would if we were proposing that, as opposed to one big flat wall. So
Right.
allowing that second floor dormer to step back 2 feet from both corners. And if we move that facade to the right, it would actually be stepped back even further. So I've tried to be mindful of that and thinking of the dormer, that it would be something that, as if this was here, I would have proposed this to gain some headspace.
Right, absolutely.
Not just stacking it on top of each other.
Mm-hmm. How does anyone else feel about that?
I agree. I think that this is very ambitious for the lot that you have. I mean, obviously you've got parking issues. If I were guessing, you're going to have to end up bringing vehicles to the rear and making a turnaround to get back out. And on this one elevation, there's 2 ridge lines. Is there a valley in the middle of that roof structure?
So it currently has a very shallow pitch flat roof there. And so we're working through some of those details, but I think the flat roof that's there, we would still have to do a flat roof on the portion between those valleys. We're still trying to decide how that happens, but I think a flat roof might be, or a low slope roof between all of that might be the way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
This is a project where I really wish I had a drone so that you could see the roof, because it is a very complicated a little unique roof form for the existing. So trying to tie in the new was a bit of a challenge.
That's why you're there, Amanda.
I know. Ben thinks it's an excuse for a drone.
Well, I feel like until you can marry making the parking work with an addition, that us getting into the details of an addition is kind of fruitless.
I'm on a very tight time frame, so I would not be surprised if I still continue to the next one, even if we've got to do the parking separate from the addition in order to figure something out, just from my, at least, obligations that I will try to hit. So I would definitely like any amount of feedback that you guys can give.
Well, I think my feedback would be, since I'm off mute right now, what Ken said, it feels ambitious for the existing structure.
I would have to agree with Mary and Ken on that. This is Susan.
Now, it is less than 50% of what is allowed to be built on, as far as, you know, if everything were considered historic. So that is one thing we would need Ms. McCurry to show, is that the existing additions are all historic. And the way the guidelines read is that anything that's been there at least 50 years. And I believe that's the case.
It was, yeah. It's the only thing is that side porch.
Exactly. So so I think there is a case for that. So what you're seeing is really just it's the roof structure and the scale.
Yeah, and I understand the using the term ambitious for sure. But I do think from a scale standpoint, it is 50% less. It is less than half on that front facade. It actually sticks out back on that first corner. It's back 12 feet. It'll actually be back less when we pull it to the back corner of that, the enclosed porch. I just think that part of it is, it appears big, but the shape of the property already goes out that way too. So we're really taking an L shape on that, like you can see on that plan, and we're putting it on to what is existing. So it appears big, but I think part of it is just how it's being deceived, because we were already in that corner of that niche. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And we can't go all the way back either, because we just have a really tight rear setback. So we're having to go towards the right a little bit.
If you can show us what we're really going to see, that would be very helpful. And I do appreciate that you have stayed below the existing roof line. That is
absolutely absolutely
important.
I just want to be consistent in my guidance to all applicants, and it's really important to me to be fair in providing that guidance, and our consistent guidance is to be consistent with scale. This height is a one-story, it's perceived as a one-story scale. Now, you may have super vaulted ceilings that would allow you to take advantage of dormers. So I just would encourage you to continue to try to have this maybe read as a dormer instead of a second floor, and maybe it's the three-dimensional rendering that is making it seem as the several commissioners said, more ambitious for the site than perhaps it really is. So perhaps it can be rendered in a different way that makes it seem more realistic for the intent.
I would like to see, Amanda, if you would put some stakes out on the site so that we could see where the addition is actually going. I think that would be helpful, and we can drive by and look at that at our, at our leisure.
Yeah, because the guidelines are do speak to side additions, stating that they're not always the most appropriate, but I do think that the commission is open to side additions. Of course, there's not a lot of place for this house to grow toward the back. And I do understand the desire to add to it. For whatever reason, this form here sitting so well with me, and I'm trying to understand why. I think maybe it's because of the model.
So Amanda, both Amandas, I would say that I'm echoing with what Susan said, that if there were some markers out, that would help me a lot, because right now this feels very forced from this angle, and it could just be the drawing.
Right. Yeah,
but it just feels
it's
very
the drawing.
forced.
I think you got to look at it head on. It's what, and we're not seeing that. We're seeing it at on an angle.
Yeah, I would agree with the markers. And I mean, if you're going to do markers, I think you could even mark the parking situation once you get that figured out.
I know what this is. I don't feel like there's a demarcation for this being an addition.
Yeah, it's really hard to see because of how the rendering tied in. I think some color would help with that too, and to show you what's going on. And it does look like it's really proud forward, but that's because that's where you're hovering right here looking down at it. So
Right.
we can look at doing more eye view renderings as opposed to just an architectural isometric view type deal.
And I really think that, providing these three-dimensional renderings is truly helpful. Please don't think for a second we don't mean that, because it has helped every single person that's in this meeting understand your mass intent. So thank you.
Is there a problem? Is there a problem with what Susan Besser suggested in having markers put out on that site?
I'll talk with the owner and the contractor to see if that's a viable option for sure. I know it'll be very helpful.
Yeah, we've done that. We've done that in several other sites, and it's been very, very helpful.
Now, I want to let everyone know, as a commissioner, if they are put down, you're welcome to walk by, but you are not welcome to enter the site unless we, as staff, talk to you about and give you permission to do that. Is that fair to say, Kelly Dannenfelser?
Yes.
Okay.
And also, I'll just ask the question of the commissioners. What are your thoughts, so that Amanda can get some feedback on the window style and configuration of the addition?
And I'll tell you that I feel good from once you see the elevations, from having done a lot of historic work in the past, that we can get somewhere good with the trim. I honestly struggled a little bit if these windows should mimic like a 6/1 or be a 1/1. And I went back and forth a little bit on that because the windows in the front are 1/1, but all the rest of them are divided light over, that's my unanswer for the day.
I'm looking at my Miss Besser.
I think that my inclination would be to go with 1/1 because it would be a later time, would show a later time period.
Right.
And I think it might be less distracting.
Yep, and I don't disagree with that at all.
And I could see where Amanda was coming from too, because she was trying to show differentiation, that she didn't want to compete with the front. So I can.
And that's why those windows are smaller in scale too. So they're still picking up a size, because I think if you guys remember from my meeting, there was like already 10 different window sizes.
Yep.
So it's still picking up a window size that's already there. So that way it's not completely outside of left field, but I do think keeping that scale smaller than the large windows on the front is helpful. But I've been, the more I've been staring at this for this period of time, I'm kind of liking the 1/1 as well.
I think so too.
Amanda Rose, are we dedicated to what I would call this mansard roof form on the back? Or would it be, since it's on the back, would it be possible to reconfigure that to simplify this roof form?
The way that the guidelines read is that you would need to preserve and maintain roof forms that are visible from the street view. I think it's understood that when you're doing additions that you will need to compromise roof forms where those additions are to be added to some degree. And in this case, I can see where Amanda's struggling a little bit to try to make this accommodated.
It's a hard roof structure to begin with, but I'm appreciative, Ken, of you asking that question, because I think there are ways we can probably simplify what's there, because it's a little bit of a
I
challenge.
think the important, like, theoretical question is, how important is that mansard roof to tell it, like, telling the story of the house? And I think to Mrs. Pierce's point, it was like a fashionable thing at some point, but I think it was like, I don't think it's architecturally typical to this style of house, certainly. I think it was like a fashionable thing add-on, like in way later on. So
I mean, leisure suits were a fad at one time too.
That's what I was about to say. Polyester leisure suits were cool once.
Not necessarily, and
Totally
I don't,
fine with not hanging on to that.
like Masonite was cool at one point.
yeah, that's not.
And when you drove around town and looked at them, even when they were new, you just went, really?
Yeah, it's odd. And I don't think the question is that,
Professional in my answer, Mary.
and I don't know if necessarily that mansard piece in the front is just a fun nod, but it also does help tie into the roof that's there. It's more this piece off the back, and I've just kind of said, forget the piece off the back. And I think the big challenge that we have is how to, tie in that flat roof that's existing, that's back there. And I think that is where maybe we can do some rethinking of some of the you can't even, I'm pointing at my computer like you can see it.
Tell me where to point.
The back side of the front gable.
So you want me to go to the other page, or is
So
this?
this one's perfect.
Okay.
So move it towards the middle. So I wonder if there's a way to, maybe do something with where all that comes together. Right now it's flat.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
So that's been where it's the challenge, because that's a flat roof with all these gables draining to it. If maybe we raise that up a little bit, because you won't see it anyway, over the front gable to allow the water to shed better.
And Ken, I'm really glad you asked that question.
I mean, sometimes you have to work with what you have, but this just seems a little contrived.
It's a little crazy back there.
Anything else?
Just.
Do you think that would really help? Do you think it would help to get rid? Do you think that would help with structure, like immensely?
That's already gone. It's gone in the new, because we've grown out the left and the right. So that mansard's not there.
Okay, but do you think it'll help?
It's just the flat portion of that roof and how it all ties in is the hard part at this point. But we'll give some more thought to that. I feel confident we can come up with a good solution.
Okay, anybody else got anything?
Mary, did you have something else?
I was just going to be silly. No.
We've been here a while. Silly might start to happen.
We have.
I was going to say platform shoes were real popular then too.
I'll bust those out for the next meeting.
Okay.
Well, Amanda, I think you've got a challenge on your hands, and we appreciate what you brought forward. It sounds to me like, and please, anyone jump in if I speak out of turn. It sounds like the commissioners are generally open to a side elevation addition. They would like to have a better sense of how far it comes out from the building. So if you could put some stakes out and contact me to let me know when that's done, then I can let them know when to walk or drive by, and repeat, not enter the property, but walk and drive by to see that. We would ask that you continue to try to keep that under that ridge line, of course, and read like a dormer and not a second floor addition. And then there were comments about, making sure that it, reads as an addition and not an extension of the existing building form, so that, it's clear that it was added on.
Right. And that addition, I did pull another dimension, is 33.5 feet back from that front corner too.
Okay. Does that help everyone it's
a pretty long
distance
back there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and as far as the parking, I will be in contact with you very shortly about, what considerations you'll need for engineering.
That sounds good. I know that's definitely Ben's domain. He's more stronger at that type of stuff. And I know he was trying to contact somebody with the city, so that would be very helpful.
Okay, no
And
problem.
then
I'll get
if
on
you
something.
could just include Ms. Besser's comments about the windows being
Yeah.
1/1.
Absolutely, one
One
over
over
one
one.
would be fine.
I like that too.
Okay, good. Amanda, thank you very much, Amanda McCrary.
Yes.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Are there any comments from the public on any of these items? I know we had some call-ins.
Michael Hathaway.
On the line for the public. Would like to give comments. No comments.
No comment.
Hi, Mike, are you there?
I am. The first time you
Hi.
asked the question for me to comment, I had every button on my phone. I couldn't unmute myself, so
That's all
I'm
right.
sorry.
That's okay. I
feel
just
like-
wanted to, I recognize you were here.
I feel like 100-year-old with all this new technology sometimes.
Well, I hope that I didn't leave you
Sorry
out
about
of the
that.
discussion.
You guys have had great comments, and I echo most of your comments.
Okay, great.
Good. All right. I don't think we need a motion to adjourn.
I will move to adjourn.
We do.
Oh, we do. All right,
Oh,
then
we
I have to
do.
do.
I'm sorry I didn't put that on here. I didn't
That's
know
right.
that.
You're gonna have to work on my script. Okay, is there a second to Mary's motion to adjourn?
Second.
Kelly, again.
Aye.
All right, then just respond when I call your name. Kelly Baker Heffley,
Aye.
Susan Besser,
Aye.
Jeff Carson,
Aye.
Mike Hathaway,
Aye.
Lisa Barquart,
Aye.
Mary Pierce,
Aye.
Ken Scalf,
Aye.
Jim Roberts, yes. All right, thanks to all.
Thank you all. We appreciate you.
Aye.
Stay
Good to see
well.
everybody.
Aye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Kelly.